Happy New Year. Welcome back to the very first episode of 2024. It feels like it's been a while. I think it's been like 4 weeks since I've done an episode, but we had holidays, we had some family stuff, but now we're back and we're back in the saddle feeling good. And this is episode number 68, which is pretty cool. And it's a returning guest, a guest who hasn't been here in about 10 months. And that is, of course, Bookborn. Bookborn, I just want to thank you for supporting smaller channels. Coming
Don't
my
even start with that
measly
Alan stuff. Don't even. We're just right away. No.
Hey, congrats on all the success. I feel like every time I look, you gain 10,000 subscribers. Like every time I glance over, you have a video that is so well put together, so nuanced. And I'm like, it's almost like that works. It's almost like people like that.
Thank you. It's very kind. I don't know. We've talked about this before. It's just like, it's never enough. So when people tell me that, I'm like, oh yeah, let me just like take a break. It's great. I'm very happy. It's all good.
You've been kind of riding the wave. Your last video that I watched, which was before the SPFO BO one, you were saying plans for the New Year's. I don't really have any.
Yeah.
And I embrace that. I feel that.
I'm tired. Jimmy, are you tired?
Yeah. I'm very tired.
I'm going into 2024 tired. That's like what I told Zach. Like usually I'm a huge New Year's resolution person, and I'm the kind of person who like follows through. Like I'm not the person who does like a resolution and then doesn't do anything with it. I usually have one like a goal in this area, like a parenting goal, a reading goal, like all these. This year I was like, none. I don't want any goals. I don't want any expectations. I want to do less.
Yeah, I feel like it's the year of less. I've not just because I mean, I kind of feel that way too. I've been talking about, trying to get more out of what I do rather than just doing more all the time. And I feel like I saw a lot of people kind of feeling this way. And I don't know if it's something that's in the air. I don't know, maybe if it's just because most of the people I talk to are book readers now and it's online. So maybe it's just something in our community. Maybe just all those year-end wrap-ups with people with like 300 books. And you're just like, who am I competing against here? I might as well just read 24 books and be happy. And that sounds great.
I just want to read the books I feel like reading, which can be hard when you're on booktube.
Like, yes, but for you, I feel like it works because you always seem to find good topics to talk about, at least with like the bigger stuff that you read. Like A Song of Ice and Fire has inspired many of your best videos, I think, like since you started it.
I have felt extremely inspired by A Song of Ice and Fire. Who would have expected? Like the video, I don't know if you watched my Sansa defense video.
I did.
But I have this intro that me and Zach are being very extra in. And like, it is extra, but it's not quite. Like, I do just talk about it so much to the point where like, that's why Zach read it. He was like, you literally won't stop talking about this stuff. And just full spoilers, just being like, well, you'll never read it. It's fine. He's like, I'm going to read it. So like, just stop talking about it. It's like living, and it's the worst because like, it is about 2 decades too late. Everyone's moved on and I'm starting.
No, I haven't moved on. I'm stuck in the past. I'm still like over here just making wild predictions about Winds of Winter. The funny thing is I see people, a lot of people are like, I had these conversations 15 years ago. Meanwhile, I'm like, yeah, I'm still having them. Just still here, just plugging away, encouraging dementia to strike me down at any moment, just repeating myself.
It's funny though. The coolest thing to me that's come out of the Song of Ice and Fire videos is I've had like a significant amount of comments being like, your enthusiasm reminds me why I liked it. Like, it reminds me that maybe I've let myself become too bitter and like, I need to just embrace that I loved it. And like, that makes me feel really good. Like, oh, I've helped someone remember why they loved something. And that felt really good.
Yeah. I mean, I felt that watching your videos about it. And when I see people who like pick up the series and not just pick up the series, but like really engage with it and go a little bit deeper, it always makes me thrilled. And it always ends up, kind of putting a little pep in my step, doing Bend the Knee weekly. We're doing about a chapter a week as we usually do. And some weeks, we're doing the chapter and like, all right, we did chapter. And then there's some weeks, we'll either get an email or like I'll watch, like, for instance, like watch you talk about it. And I'm just like, man, I'm fired up to talk about this again. And that's just how I know it's like my favorite thing, that I've read. But there is something just beautiful about just liking what you're reading, like, and just enjoying it full-heartedly and being like, you know what? Even if I'm late or if no one else likes this thing, this is for me.
I like it, and I'm here to talk about it. It'll be interesting. I'm excited to get more theory focused once I reread. Like, I'm already so ready to reread. Like, once I finished A Storm of Swords, I had to be like, okay, I have to finish the series before I reread. But I get frustrated when I know I've missed things. And like, so I finished that and it was like, I missed it. I know there's just so much I've missed. So I'm just excited to go back. Oh yeah, do it, Anita.
Yeah, you should totally do it. I see you're inspiring people to pick it up for the very first time because you had some concerns and that's why you never really picked it up. And I think you have found that there's a whole nother experience than the one that's kind of projected by people, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's super interesting because people, I guess, thought I was like a hater. And I was like, I have never said anything bad about it.
Yeah, I never heard you be rude about it. I never heard you be like George R. Martin is a pervert and a pig and I hate him. I've never heard you say that.
I never will offer an opinion like that on something I haven't read. Like I've been like that my whole life. Like in high school, like I read Twilight and I was like, I read it. So I get to say I don't like it because I read it. So like, I'm not going to go. The only thing I ever said about A Song of Ice and Fire before reading or watching was that I was worried that the show would teach people the wrong things and that fantasy has to be graphic to be successful. And the funny thing is after reading it, I would double down on that because I already feel like people take the wrong lessons from his works.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, especially the big event that happens in book 3, like I didn't know a ton about that, but I knew culturally about it, if that makes sense. And so when I read it and it was just so different than I could have imagined, it was immediately like I was like, I was right. We did learn the wrong lessons from this because
well, you can see it
in
the genre. You can see it in the genre, actually. I'm with you on people taking the wrong lessons. I battle back many times against nihilistic claims about the series, and I'm a person who actually believes it's a heroic fantasy. It's just getting there in a totally different way. Well, maybe not totally different nowadays, but it was very different for the time that it was released in. But I don't know. I'm with you. I think anything that's that big will have positive and negative effects, no matter, independent of the work. There's going to be trends that come from it. People are going to fixate on the wrong things that are being accomplished and think that they understand how to do them and then try to repeat those. That the biggest thing obviously is being kind of just ruthlessly grim or brutal. I think people took the wrong pieces of the puzzle, in my opinion. And I think you can kind of see that. And also just like the tone of fantasy changed after the success of the show. And sometimes variety is a good thing. Sometimes I don't want to read about everyone being, put into a corner and beat with a stick. It's not exactly the best thing, but you could point to anything like this, right? Tolkien,
Hunger Games is a big one.
Hunger Games is a great example. I mean, YA actually maybe more than anything, because YA seems to have more recently in like the last 20 years, probably has had more monumental series come out than adult fantasies, because you have Twilight, Hunger Games, Harry Potter, obviously.
And you saw so many I mean, I love the Hunger Games as an example because you saw so many dystopian books come out of that with strong female characters that were so pale compared to Katniss, because people didn't actually understand Katniss as a character. And I think like George R. R. Martin is such a good writer. Like, and I think people underestimate he could do it because he's a really good writer. So like you can take those elements, and if you're not as poetic or devastating with the words, I mean that event in book 3, I guess I can say Red Wedding. It's like everyone knows Red Wedding. Like I'm still not quite over it emotionally, mentally, physically, but especially because it's like technically not that many characters die. Like it's not like this bloodbath that I was expecting. It is the horror of how he wrote it. It's just so devastating. In fact, one of my favorite lines, I think, of the whole series comes from that, because it's so terrible. And it's just like, I feel like he's psychopathic that he wrote it, because it's so terrible. It's so devastating. And it's just such a weird phrase to write. I don't know. Do you know what phrase I'm talking about? I feel like it's a big spoiler, so I don't want to say it.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about, and I would put that into the spoiler territory. But he has a way with turns of phrases that twist the knife, and really what you're seeing there is someone who's been working at it for a really long time. I mean, he wrote a lot, and if you go back and read some of his shorter fiction, like for instance, Sand Kings or Night Flyers, or even like Fever Dream, which is another novel, you can kind of see him like finding his voice, and then A Song of Ice and Fire being like kind of like that magnum opus type deal, right? It's like the big grand achievement that he has, and he still gets some things wrong. You know, he's not perfect by any means, but that's a dude that put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I think fell in love with the story. Not just in novel form, but he also enjoyed writing plays, and he enjoyed writing television. And I feel like how people can feel the love of Middle Earth and Tolkien's writing, I feel like I can feel George's love of the fantasy genre whenever I read A Song of Ice and Fire. And it always, it's weird, but it's uplifting to me in a lot of ways.
I don't think that's weird. You can tell, or at least I can. I feel like I can always tell when you read a book and you're like, this person knows fantasy. They read it, they loved it, they knew it, and they knew how they could contribute.
Yeah.
And I definitely think he's one of the authors where that comes out really strong. Strong of it. But
yeah, I think he had things he wanted to say, which is something I'm always really interested in whenever someone writes a fantasy book or a series and you feel like they're beginning a conversation with the genre. One of the people who I think actually does this, and he gets, he's polarizing, and I'm not saying he's my favorite author, but I actually think Jay Kristoff did this whenever I read some of the Nevernight books. And I felt like it was not just referential, but he was taking things and trying to kind of like put the Jay Kristoff spin on it, which works for some people, doesn't work for others. But I really enjoy work that's not just referential, but in conversation with anything. And that goes for any genre, actually. It's one of the reasons why I like Cormac McCarthy so much, is because I felt like he was trying to have a conversation with people about the Western genre. Maybe not on purpose, but he did it.
But he did it anyway.
Yeah, and he changed that genre drastically with Blood Meridian. So I don't know. I think those works are so encouraging to go out there and seek out other things and seek other voices and other people's visions about what, for in this instance, like fantasy could be. You were saying that you want to reread and you want to get into the theory thing. The funny thing is like, I feel like you're very into Cosmere, right? Like you're like, you like Sanderson. Yeah. I love Stormlight, and now I'm doing the reread of it with Christian on Lost in Roshar, and I kind of just ignored all the theories my first time through because I'm like, what happens next? But going back through it, it is actually crazy how many theories like you see coming out in a reread. And I think that'll be your experience when you get back into A Song of Ice and Fire. Plus, once you have the full context, I can just yell at you and just send you things and be like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this?
I don't even know if theory is the right word for what I love, because I will say I don't like necessarily, even in Cosmere, theorize like events in the future. I tend to like to see connections, and like that's where I enjoy being. So I can't imagine myself coming up with like very interesting, like this will be in Winds of Winter or whatever, but just seeing the connections, and like I already know that I missed a connection in the House of the Undying. Everyone's been so excited to tell me about the House of the Undying. Okay. And I'm like, okay, thank you for telling me. But like when I reread it, I would have noticed. And I do like to reread and discover that stuff. It's just very enjoyable to see how he lays it down. And I know that he did, because there was stuff I already picked up that he told us. He's not someone who hides it. He tells you and then is like, ha, you didn't know, but I told you 3, 4, 5 times that this was going to happen.
Yeah. And sometimes on the reread, you're like, how dense am I to miss these things? I love that. I love the breadcrumbs that are really slaps in the face that you don't realize. It really just makes rereading so much more rewarding. And my favorite series are ones that I can reread. I wonder how I'll feel whenever I reread First Law, if I'm going to have that same experience, because as we know, Abercrombie is not like trying to change the world with his plots, right? That's not, it's not really what he does. But I'm wondering if maybe like certain character moments or decisions will be more evident of like, oh, that was obviously going to happen type deal whenever I reread that series.
Especially, I think, from the full 10 books. Like,
Mhm.
envisioning, like, the whole arc for some of those characters. Yeah, I think Abercrombie's super interesting because I know that he was very influenced by Game of Thrones, or at least he says that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I read Abercrombie first. And I feel like Abercrombie's the one who took the right things from the genre. Like, he saw what Martin was doing and was like, I get it. And also, here's my take on what he's doing, because it's different. The First Law is very different.
Right. Yeah.
But I see the influences so clearly, but also he did his own thing. And I think that's why it's so successful. Because, like, he understood it. And so then he could build on it in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And whenever someone says something is like A Song of Ice and Fire, or even like Lord of the Rings, or any of these big series, Wheel of Time, you have to ask, well, in what aspect?
What
Because
part?
because they're so vast, and the ones that stick around generally do multiple things well. They're multifaceted series. And I think Abercrombie said, there's something to this, morally gray approach, and the cynical nature of some of the stuff that happens. I want to dig into that a little bit more. And maybe that's what spoke to him about the series. But I think, going down that really in-depth, close to the shoulder character POVs is what he, accomplished. And he took that piece and he kind of ran with it. And his dialogue is great. He's also very witty and very funny. Yes. I think he's much funnier than George. So that's one of his strengths. Do you feel like First Law is more pessimistic than A Song of Ice and Fire?
Yes.
I do too. I've always said that. Yeah.
He definitely, it is, but it's funnier. It's just so funny that I feel like sometimes you can ignore how pessimistic that series is.
Yeah.
The thing about Game of Thrones is, like, yes, it's as I like to keep telling people, it's emotionally eviscerating. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not, I don't know, hopeless to me.
I agree.
It's there are people there trying, to do the right thing and to do good or whatever. And it's more like, it feels realistic. And I hate using that as like a word, but it just feels like, yeah, like, these are the things that would probably be happening if there was a power vacuum in this time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just don't think it's depressing, but I don't know. It's just a different flavor to me. I'm not going to get to the end and capitalism is the big bad like I am in Abercrombie. That doesn't feel like where this is going. I'm sorry if that's spoilers for everybody.
That's hilarious. No, there are heroes. They just look a lot different than a lot of other epic fantasy, I think. And that's one of the reasons why.
It's smaller heroic moments. Like, here, I'm going to be on my Sansa crap again. Like, the way Sansa has to deal with things in A Storm of Swords, like, is heroic in a lot of ways. Like, small, individually, kind of heroic in the way that we generally have to be in our day-to-day lives, not in the big kind of heroism, which I think is very interesting. And some of the Jamie, like, what a complicated character that is. Or Tyrion. Did I say it? Did I make everyone mad, or did I get it right?
Tyrion. Honestly, the best part of you reading A Song of Ice and Fire is, like, I wonder how she's going to pronounce these names.
Just don't even worry about it. Like, yeah, it's weird. It's not like they're like the best of people, but you understand them so deeply. And so I don't know. It just feels less grim.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said about being heroic in, like, the more mundane ways, or the more monotonous ways that for me speaks to me, because especially, like, dealing with depression and stuff, like, there are days, maybe not days, but maybe in retrospect, I'll look back at, like, a really bad time and I'll think about something I was able to accomplish while I was, like, struggling to get out of bed and shower and these things. And I'm like, wow, I made a video. Like, and I'm like, that good job, man. Like, and very rare that I ever compliment myself, by the way. But to me, that's like a very mundane way of being heroic. And I think it just speaks to me on that level. I actually talked about this. I've been recording a vlog for Impel Down for One Piece on Dudes Talking Manga. And one of the things that Oda does very well in One Piece is that he makes friendship epic and heroic. And being someone's friend in, like, a really tough circumstance is, like, it can be a lot. I mean, we were kind of talking before we went live, like, people who mean a lot to you and trying to stick by them, even when it's the hardest, sometimes that takes a heroic action or effort.
Yes.
And I think there's some heroic moments like that in A Song of Ice and Fire as well. I think Sam's allegiance to Gilly and John is really admirable. I think Davos is extraordinarily heroic in his approach.
I
and
love Davos so much.
For how much of that man has lost and what he has to deal with as far as like classism goes. I mean,
he's also so courageous. Like there's just moments where he is just so courageous. And I love that Martin is able to write those very small, like courageous moments. As someone who cannot make a phone call, like Davos going in to speak to Stannis, that is like peak anxiety for me reading that. And being brave enough for him to just stand up and be like, I might die for saying this, but here it is.
And standing up what he thinks is right. And a lot of it does come from him wanting the best for Stannis, the one true king.
Don't come with me. No, absolutely not, Jimmy. I'm not gonna let that slide.
I'm sorry. Wait, what? You mean his right to the throne isn't good enough for you?
I do love Stannis fans though, because you guys are incredibly polite and unending in your support for Stannis.
Honestly, it's kind of just a meme to be.
I can tell. I can tell.
I mean, he is kind of so like he really should be. But I actually love Renly. I love the Rainbow Guard. I'm all about it. That's my dude.
Renly should also not be king.
No, he would not be well.
No, I mean,
I would hear an argument for him. I'd hear an argument for him. He's got drip.
Yeah, it's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Someone said this earlier. They said that like Abercrombie also has characters trying to do good, which I agree with. But Abercrombie's answer is that it doesn't matter. Like the end of Abercrombie books are like, you can try all you want to be good, but it'll never happen. And I don't feel that in Martin. That's how I feel like it's different. I just wanted to address that comment. I don't.
I could see that point. Yeah. I mean, there are certainly people that I would classify as doing their best in First Law. I've always said it's people doing their best in terrible circumstances where morality shifts depending on where you are, which is kind of also present in A Song of Ice and Fire because like Jaime is that to a T.
I know. I hate that I like Jaime. I really hate it. Like I hated reading that third book and being like, ugh.
I think like the thing about special about things like Jaime and not just exclusive to an Abercrombie or a Martin is just like anyone that can write a character that makes you conflicted with yourself or maybe even things that you thought were 100% true for values or morality. And then they make you kind of reconsider those things, whether for good or bad. That's compelling. Like those are the characters I would like to be reading most of the time, I think.
It is also like such an example of why I get so annoyed when people write off fantasy as a genre. Like there's so much you can explore in the safety of fiction and like far removed fiction. And like the studies are very bad. Let me say this. These studies are horrible studies. I think we've talked about this before, but saying that like reading fantasy makes you more empathetic and like the studies are garbage. Don't listen to them. But I believe it. Like, it's not hard for me to believe it. Like, I don't believe it's provable. I don't think it's causation. But I feel through years of reading that kind of stuff makes you more empathetic to, like, people went through stuff sometimes. And, like, understanding people's actions. Not that you'll accept them. But, like, Jaime's just such an example of that. Like, people were telling me I'd love Jaime. I was like, he pushed an 8-year-old out a window. Like, I don't think I am. Thank you. And then I read the third book and I was like, but I kind of get it. I understand. It's not like I approve of that. Obviously I don't, but just hearing what he went through, it just changes things. And like you said, like, not to get into spoilers, but hearing the events that happened from his perspective versus how we have heard from like 6 different characters, what happened was just like such an interesting, well done thing.
Yeah. I think also it's an individual question about how far open or how close can you come to closing the door on redemption until you're still able to put your foot in it and open that back up. Like that's a really hard question to answer.
Yeah.
And if you leave space and room for redemption, I think that there is opportunities for massive, change and growth. There's also a chance that it becomes circular and comes back on itself. and maybe he disappoints you in a whole new way, which is, I think, what Abercrombie is more a fan of. I think he likes to kind of almost get you to keep the door open, and then he comes in and stabs you in the spleen, and you're like, I shouldn't have.
I call Abercrombie the anti-hero's journey. I say it's like the exact opposite of the hero's journey. Instead of descending and growing, you descend and fall.
Yeah, and I don't think I would say as a whole maybe that I prefer it, but when it's done well, it's really hard to look away from.
I mean, I like it all, right? Like it's so funny to me. People are just like, well, I hate Sanderson because I like Abercrombie. I'm like, look, those are both like two of my favorite series. Like, it's just they're different strokes for different moments. They're not trying to be the same thing.
Derry says, I want to say thank you, Bookborn, for describing Jamie as someone abused by his family. I think A Song of Ice and Fire has tons to say about how family can do you wrong. And one of the things I heard Christina, Alan's wife, say, and it has stuck with me since she said it, and she said, hope weighs heavy. And whenever the hope of your house and your lineage and your reign is on these children that are in their teens, and I was like, in general, just in our real world, hope weighs heavy is a very interesting thing to think about for me. But like, it is very valid in A Song of Ice and Fire. We talk about secession, talking about trying to secure these marriages, and all the hope lies on the shoulders of people like Jamie, right?
Or like Sansa, for example.
Well, she's annoying and dumb.
Yeah, Jamie's not, but Sansa is annoying and dumb. And
what's the difference between those two?
I will say, Derry, what's funny is like I said that about Jamie. I was like, I was shocked. I'm like, he was abused, in my opinion, by Cersei. Cersei. People hate how I say that. Cersei. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, Cersei's fine. Yeah.
And people did not like that opinion. I had some people who were like calling me very woke for that opinion, which was not what I expected. So yeah, that was surprising actually, how much resistance I got. And you have to understand, like, I don't know the conversations happening around A Song of Ice and Fire. I haven't been in the fandom. So a lot of these opinions I'm just kind of like stating, not knowing whether they're popular or not. Like when I told everyone I loved Catelyn, that was very did not know that was going to be such a hot opinion.
Yeah, that could get people riled up pretty easily. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. People were shocked by that. So it's kind of funny. Like, I don't always know what an opinion is going to bring me because I'm so removed initially. And so that was funny. I was surprised at the resistance I got from that.
Yeah, that's the thing with, and this is extending past A Song of Ice and Fire, but with fandoms is that if you come at something, there's like these preconceived talking points that you need to and I don't mean need to, but it feels like you have to stick to it. And it's almost like you're proving that you read the thing and that you read it the way that has been generally accepted. And that can be a really negative experience with a series. I had this with One Piece and my last video, which was like 2 months ago, because I just had to take a break because people were so mad that I didn't like a certain scene.
Oh, I remember you telling me about this. Like, you didn't like a scene and you didn't get it, Jimmy. You didn't get it.
I have never been called the R word more times in my life. I had to delete triple-digit comments. I mean, and this isn't an indictment of the One Piece fandom. This is not there just happens to be a ton of One Piece fans. Yeah. But I've seen this happen in other fandoms as well. But, you know, for you coming to a series that has been talked about so long, I imagine it can be intimidating. Just sticking your neck out there and being like, I like Catelyn. And everyone's like, what? You know, like, whoa, what?
I think like, yeah, I feel like I should care more, but instead I'm just like, well, that's how I felt. So, oh, well, I think like it comes, I definitely am not someone who thinks a fan is better because they've been there earlier. So like when people come to Cosmere early, or I mean now, and they're like, oh, I don't know anything. I'm like, that's fine. Who cares? Like, I don't care that you just got into it this year. Like, who cares? You know? And so I know I don't know a lot. I'm not pretending I do, but like my experience reading the book is just as valid as someone reading it 20 years ago. And so for me, like, I just kind of let it roll off my back. I'm just like, well, whatever, that's fine. I'm here for my hot takes that I didn't know were hot takes. That's fine.
It's refreshing to hear. Like and by the way, I like Catelyn too. and I've been fighting this war
Jimmy,
for a
I'm
long
so
time.
glad that you're correct. I'm so glad.
I mean, I'm not saying that she doesn't do some heinous things or
Yeah.
infuriate me at times, but I think I'm a little bit endeared to the way that George R. R. Martin writes mothers. I think that something happened with George
I'm
and
super
his mom.
endeared to it.
Yeah, I don't know with the relationship they have, but if I ever got to interview George R. R. Martin, that'd be one of the first questions. I'd be like, tell me about your mom. Because I think he writes various types of mothers, but he does them all and they kind of feel like real,
Yes.
in a way. And I think even with the flaws that mothers can have, and I find it to be one of the stronger aspects, at least of the first two books. But some people really don't like reading her chapters very much, but I do.
That's objectively incorrect, but that's fine. Sometimes people are wrong and you have to deal with that, and that's fine.
Well, this is a perfect segue into your video about hating the right way or disagreeing the
Oh,
right way. What an interesting video at a time where I feel like I have been also considering like the way I conversate about books, and more specifically whenever I disagree with people about books. I've always been fairly respectful. I might joke around
for
with people
sure.
I'm a little bit closer to. Uh,
I mean,
but I
that's
think
not fair. If you know someone, I'm
yeah,
allowed to message you and be like, this is a terrible opinion, Jimmy. That's very different than like a random stranger on the internet saying that.
yes, and context matters, the relationships matter. But
Yeah.
I like the video quite a bit because I'm involved in the community. I'm closer to the conversations than 99% of people who even watch this video will be.
Yeah.
Having my patron Discord, being in other Discords, talking to people all the time about this kind of stuff. And I don't know, I thought it was good food for thought, and it made me kind of reflect on the way that I talk about it. And I think one of the things that kind of stood out to me is you were talking about like, well, it's just fiction, and
Mhm.
people read differently. Like so maybe I want to read to extend empathy to Sansa or whoever it might be. Some people would like to hear more about the cannons and the military strategy or whatever else, and both are totally valid. And in your video, I think you were kind of making the point of if I'm talking about the nuance of Sansa and how we should be empathetic towards her, and people are like, well, it's just fiction. I think I'm like on your side on that. But the flip side of this is interesting as well. I've seen people say, well, I don't care about that. And then people make a moral assessment of the person because they didn't read it like that. And I think
Mm,
that that's just as harmful, actually.
absolutely. I think that was the point I was trying to make about like you view a painting. Like someone might look at a painting and be like, this is
Mhm.
nice. And someone might also attach like this deep whatever to it. It's funny actually. Now I'm getting distracted, but I actually I have a video script kind of like in the works in my head, kind of about what you just said,
Hmm.
talking about like some people, in English teachers get this bad reputation. Like, ugh, do you remember how they made us like dig into whether the curtains were blue? And sometimes the curtains are just blue. And it's like, I feel as someone who loved my English classes, um, and enjoyed that kind of analysis. I'm
Hmm.
not saying it's like the end all be all, absolutely not. And I do think there's problems with forcing kids to read in that way and making it unenjoyable. But it is a way to interact with fiction. Just like it's a way to read a story and just want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And the idea of like there are multiple ways to enjoy fiction. And like, yeah, if you come to my Sansa video and you're like, you are thinking way too hard about this, that's a valid opinion. I am actually
I mean,
thinking too
maybe
hard
so.
about it. But it's like, it doesn't make you better or worse than me, and I'm not better or worse. That's just the way I choose to interact with this, and just like people are going to want to interact with literature in just different ways, and
Yeah.
that's fine. But don't make everyone have to interact the same way you want to interact with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a hierarchy of the way people engage. I think that might be a hot take. I actually, you know, if you want to remove nuance and just meme about a book, I think that's more than acceptable.
And honestly, it's fun.
Sometimes
Like,
it is a lot of fun.
it's just so fun. I follow a lot of accounts like that because it's hilarious. And like that's I wanted to be like, because I brought up Harry Potter and I was like, I want to be clear, like I follow a lot of those meme accounts that just totally crap on Harry Potter, and it's hilarious to me as like a big fan. Because sometimes they say like the funniest things about it. But like that's one, like, and it's funny. So I'm not saying that, but it's only when you were like, someone's trying to have a conversation with you and you just keep shutting them down, anything they're saying, because you don't want to engage. It's just like, well, then don't engage in the conversation. Like, if you're not willing to like be on the same page as somebody, you know, don't come to my Sansa video where I'm clearly taking it too seriously and be like, don't take it so seriously. It's too late. The train left the station. So why are you here? Like, that's my only thing.
The Sansa train has left the station. No,
It's left the station.
I'm not a big fan of any approach of like neutering conversations and shutting them down. So I think it's important, you know, it's a social skill to kind of understand if someone is willing to continue on engaging. But then you always run into the problem, and you mentioned this also in your video, is like there are people sometimes you have to say, oh, like I don't have anything else to say. Like, that's just how I feel. And I really like this book and I have nothing to add to it. And I don't feel like explaining to you why. And people also have to kind of respect that. Like, you have to be able to respect that someone might not want to engage about a book at all. They might want to say 5 stars was great. And sure, I would love to hear why. I mean, I know I feel the need to do that a lot of times to justify it and think through it. But sometimes you don't want to. And you got to be able to like let people do that.
I think you're right, is that it's just social skills. Like, I think that's really what it is like a social skill to read a conversation and engage with the person in an appropriate way. And unfortunately, like, the internet is where social customs go to die. And so we have to say very obvious things.
Are you saying that maybe there's a possibility fantasy readers don't have the best social skills? Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, I know how I was growing up, so I don't know.
You're included with the crowd, so you can say it, I think.
So yeah, it's acceptable. I think, like, I made this comment to someone the other day. I can't remember who, but I was like, you know, I've read fantasy for decades before getting on BookTube. And never once in my life had I ever have someone correct me on how I pronounced a name. Never once. And I was talking to people. And like, sometimes we would pronounce things differently. And like, we might be like, oh, I don't know. And that would be like all it was. Like, you know that character. And then I got online and like the barrage of comments I get about it. And I was like, it's just an example of how like sometimes talking face to face is just so different than talking on the internet.
Oh, definitely.
Just so different.
I mean, even the way you interpret text, I mean, it's a very difficult thing.
Yeah, like tone of voice. And I just mostly just I just know people wouldn't say some of the things they say to me if we were face to face. Do you ever read comments like that? And you're like, oh, you would not say that to me if we were face to face.
I may have responded to some comments in that fashion before.
I mean, you could just link to your wrestling videos, and then they would really be scared to say face to face. I'm just kidding.
I mean, there are times. I mean, I've been very fortunate. I have a way less hard time with comments than you do. I feel like you definitely get way worse than I do. But I've had comments where I was like, if you were in front of me right now, like, there's no more words. Like, it's going down. Like, you can't call me these things and expect me not to be upset. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah. I think being face to face matters a ton, which is why, you know, my dream for this show has always even been to get people in this room and do it in person.
Oh, that would be so amazing.
Yeah, it's just a lot of coordinating and money to get people here.
Because no one lives in the same places.
Yeah, and you know, for instance, you have a family, and you know what I mean? Hey, can you take 3 days out of your time to chat with me for 2 hours in this very overheated office?
What we need to do is like get a bunch of us, and then we just film a bunch of videos over 3 days, and then you like spread it out. So it's like all the East Coast people. Do you know what I mean? And we just like film a bunch over a 3-day period, and we all do it, and we all go there. And I guess we use your house, I guess.
I listen, if this has to become like the booktube Big Brother house, like, I'm totally down. I don't know how Kelsey feels about it, but I assume she's cool. She's pretty easy going. I will be having an in-person guest. I don't remember when, maybe June. I can't remember. I have somebody that is going to be an in-person guest. That's a surprise.
At some point. Exciting.
At some point this year. So I actually am really excited about that. But I've only done one in-person episode, and that was with my best friend, Andrew. And it was awesome. Like, it was a totally different vibe. Especially talking to him, because he's not as into like the book community, but we realized on the show, we're like, man, you've read a lot of stuff, and we had some great conversation. But there's just like an energy you can kind of feel. And I think sometimes it's easier to pick up on subtleties and body language and energy in person, even more so than something like this, that's virtual.
Yeah, I think, I mean, my goal, I want to do a collab with someone in person eventually. Like that is my goal, because the only in-person thing I've ever done was like the best thing I ever did. Like when we did the Sanderson stuff, like you're right. The energy is so different. Like it just feels different.
His production value might have also had something to do with how well that came.
It was the people. It's always the people.
It was so well done though. Like,
yeah, I mean,
I would kill for that table, like just a table. I would love to have that table.
I mean, I've told people, like, I never understood what people did with money until I walked into that lair, and I was like, oh, I guess I would also make myself a lair, because this is pretty sweet. So
yeah, I feel like lair is the point where you've hit like wealth. If you have a lair, you're doing pretty well. Jared said this is the beginning of a horror film. I would be so down to do like a Blair Witch, like people don't realize they're watching a horror documentary and then doing that's right up my alley.
Just like slowly one booktuber disappears every time. And then it's like, where are they going? It's a little mystery. We'll leave clues. What happened?
I think that would be amazing. I would be
before we move on from A Song of Ice and Fire too quickly, I do have to say, Zach bought me a gift and it arrived today. It was a surprise.
Let's see it. Let's go.
Yeah. It happened like 10 minutes before I got on, and I'm freaking out about it. I'd never seen these ones.
The artist is Burton, right?
I don't. Let me see. But the cover of this, it's unreal.
It's too good.
Is that not the most beautiful thing you've ever seen?
Oh, it's tremendous.
Let me tell you if you're right. I'm so upset. I have to go redo my whole entire bookshelf.
There has been so many
Jonathan
people.
Burton, you nailed it.
Yeah, Jonathan Burton's illustrations are fantastic.
They're so beautiful, and it came with a map book.
Yes, the map book is really hard to fold back up. Just for
I unfolded it and then was like, I can never unfold this again. So it's gonna be like this forever now. But I know that I have it in my heart. Yeah, I'm obsessed. I'm guessing you have this one.
I have all of them. Yes, I have all of them, and they're some of my favorite books.
He was like, "Here's for your burgeoning obsession." I was like, "Thank you."
Wow, what a good husband. By the way, did you read the foreword? Did you see?
No, I opened it. I literally, this came in about 10 minutes before getting on here. So I opened it and I was like, a Joe Abercrombie foreword. And he was like, yeah, I saw that. I knew you'd be very excited.
It's like, such a well-written foreword. And not because it's in this edition, not a lot of people have actually like read it. I love it. It's one of my favorite forwards.
So excited to read it.
Yeah,
I opened and I was like, oh, immediately yes. Yes. Let's go.
Yeah. The illustrations that Burton did for the A Feast for Crows edition is my favorite, because that book has like kind of like a horror vibe to it in a lot of ways, because you're kind of just like rummaging through the remains of like what happens in book 3. And there's just this sense of hopelessness, and it feels barren in some ways and crumbling. And his art, I think, captures it extraordinarily well. I'm so excited for you to look at all the art and read through that. The best part about that book, though, is that the folio editions are actually readable. Like you can actually hold them and read them.
Well, I was noticing when I opened it, I was like, oh, this isn't like super stiff. Yep. Like I can open the book. I do get scared to read them, but maybe when I do my reread, I'll just be really careful and read that one. Because I was looking at the chapter headers and like,
they're so good.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, folio, because I delve a little bit into the book collecting circles, and folio is considered to be like, kind of like an introduction to getting nicer.
Totally. Yeah.
But, I got a soft spot for folio. I just got the Left Hand of Darkness in folio. It looks so nice. And I have a bunch of Cormac McCarthy in folio. And like, I know there's more expensive or better editions out there, but the way folio looks on the shelf is just like,
so
it's so good.
I'm probably never going to be like a huge book collector. It's just not something I'm super interested in. I obviously like collect all Sanderson's books. Like I'll have a few authors. I loved this a ton. So I get a couple special editions here and there. So for me, like, I know it's basic. Like I know a lot of the stuff I have, I don't care if I like what it looks like. If it's pretty, then I'm like, great.
Like there's obviously something to be said for like the monetary value of collecting, and I've had those kind of like acquisitions where I'm like, this is a great idea,
Yeah.
and maybe I can sell it later, or sometimes I just want it. But some of my favorite editions are what people would consider to be like slightly more basic editions of books. I really like the Dune editions that they released recently that are like available in Barnes and Noble. I
Oh,
really like those
those
covers.
covers are beautiful. I
Have you
love
read
them.
Dune?
Yeah.
I thought so.
I read
I'm gonna
Dune
read.
before I got on BookTube, so people just think anything I
Uh,
read before 3 years ago doesn't exist. So yeah, I did. I read
I have people come to me and they're like, dude, you would love, and then insert book I read, 3 years ago that I made like multiple videos about. And
oh.
I'm like, people don't go through the backlog. I mean, I understand it. There's a lot of
But I'm
videos,
like, you
but I'm
could at
like,
least do, like, a search, is all I'm saying. Like, it's like, YouTube makes it very easy to search. You could just put in the title.
listen, I'm lazy too, so I get it. Like I
Okay, look,
can't hold it
here's the
against
thing.
them.
Here's an example. Someone on one of my videos asked, like, if I had read a Sanderson book. They're like, "You would love Sanderson." And I just wanna be like,
All right, that's crazy.
that's, like, pretty hard to come to my channel.
All right, that's crazy. You are like one of the Sandersonians. Like you are one of the people.
My channel named Bookborn
Yeah.
and be like, "Have you read a Sanderson?" It was just like, there are some things we can maybe look at.
Andrew, Andrew said, I think you would love
Yeah,
A Song of Ice and Fire. Jarl says, I think you guys would love Lord of the Rings.
definitely. Like, we gotta get on that, to be honest.
Evie wants to know, do you love Dune? And did you continue the series? Which was going to be my next question as well.
No and no. Um, I actually didn't I didn't dislike Dune. I didn't dislike it. I liked it perfectly fine. Like,
Okay.
I enjoyed it. Like, I read Dune and I enjoyed it. But, like, I heard such conflicting things about the rest of the series, and I was also reading it at a time where, like, I wasn't on the internet about this stuff. So, like, I read Dune, and I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, yeah, that was pretty good. Okay, I get why it's, like, so influential." And then I, like, went and read other stuff and didn't think about it ever again, to be
Interesting.
perfectly honest.
I feel like I've loved Dune actually more the further away I've gotten from it because I think about it constantly.
Mm,
And like to think about when it was written, this dude was cooking like 60 years ago. This dude was cooking up some of the best world building.
yeah.
And I understand like the complaints about like the prose. Second half of the book is a little bit weird. Um, but I think reading the funny thing is Dune Messiah for me is one I feel like I need to reread because it was very much like I like the ideas of this book, but I don't necessarily know if I like the story of this book.
Mm,
Even though it makes Dune 1 so much better. Like it makes it a
mm.
way better book. And I'm
I've heard
excited.
that a lot.
I've actually thought about rereading Messiah before I do Children of Dune because I'm going to do Children of Dune this year, probably when the second movie comes out because like, it'll be high. I'll be in the mood,
It'll be
to be in
hyped.
that world. Yeah. So I'll probably be reading Children of Dune around that time, but I've actually been kicking around the idea of maybe reading Dune Messiah again
Mm,
because I feel like I was just so I was excited to see what happens next. And I feel like maybe I didn't give enough due to some of like the more philosophical points of the book. So I'd like to go back and try it again. And plus, it sounds like that there might be a Doom Messiah movie, which
mm,
is
exciting.
I don't know how he's going to do it. It's going to be crazy.
I wonder, I do wonder, and I've wondered this for a little bit now, if I would appreciate Dune more now than when I read it. Because I read it like 10 years ago. And just based on like what I've been reading recently, sometimes I wonder if like I went back if I would like it more. But I mean, I didn't dislike it. That's the thing. Like I enjoyed it. It
Yeah.
just, um, it didn't grip me. And I have a couple like real classics like that that kind of get me in trouble.
Like what? You can't say that and then not mention them.
Well, the other one is, and it just left my brain, which is so embarrassing because it's like a super famous book. Uh, it literally left my brain. The answer to the universe is 42. What's that book? That like super famous book.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Thank you. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That was also fine. Like 4 stars. Enjoyed my time with it. Did not feel evangelical about it like so many people do.
Somebody just threw a Kindle at the screen.
I know. I'm
Can't believe this
sorry.
garbage. I read
But like I
Hitchhiker.
said, like, I perfectly enjoyed it and like I totally understood it. I was like, yes, I can totally understand why this like inspired so many people. But it was like, yeah, that was good. and that's it.
I read Hitchhikers when I was very young. It might have been even 5th or 6th grade. And I don't remember anything from the book except for 2 things. I remember 1, it made me laugh. And I remember 2, it gave me a sense of wonder. And for me to expand on that, I'd probably have to reread it. But I just remember being like, whoa. And right after that, I think it was like 5th grade, because I would have been like 11. I think I read Lord of the Rings around that time too. And I remember liking Hitchhikers more at the time because Tolkien was a little bit dense for me.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the only thing I remember that book. And my friend Pat actually, he gave me a copy of Hitchhikers probably about 2 or 3 years ago now. And I need to read it again. And I'm curious to see adult me reading it, if I still feel that wonder. I imagine it's still pretty funny.
I'm sure. Yeah, it is. And it is a funny book. It's very funny. And like, that's the thing. Like, so many of these books, like, can just be right time, right place. Like, that happens a lot. Pratchett's humor hits more for me. So like Pratchett is just like, and I know they get compared a lot. And it's just, when I read Pratchett, I just find that it hits a lot harder usually.
Yeah, I always hear Pratchett and Douglas Adams mentioned together, which I like. I like Discworld, but I almost never reach for it for some reason. And this is the same thing with TV shows, by the way. I really always end up enjoying comedic TV shows or comedies, but like I never queue them up. But Parks and Rec is one of my favorite shows of all time. And I'm so glad that I forced myself to like start it. But I think it's because I'm just a depressing person, but I'm like laughing, you know.
For me, TV shows, it's like I only want to watch TV shows I've already seen, which means at some point I watched them for the first time. But like increasingly, as my adult life goes on, it's like I'm just going to rewatch Community for the 8th time instead of trying a new show that people think is funny. And poor Zach, like he tried, like the only reason I watch new shows is because Zach like will force me. He's like, I swear you'll like this show. Like, just watch it with me.
It's so funny we talk about TV shows because I've been watching The Americans, and the main character, I don't even know if she necessarily really looks like you, but I was like, oh, that kind of looks like Bookborn.
Who's the main character?
I don't think you. I'm terrible at this, like, because I can't remember people's faces. So like, I'll be like, I think that person looks like a person. And someone will look and be like,
I'm just always curious. I get a lot of just like random brown-haired, brown-eyed girls over the year where I'm just like, do we look alike, or is it just that we both have brown hair and brown eyes?
It's Carrie Russell, which now I'm looking. Yeah, that's not you at all. Actually,
it can be like a mannerism. There's just one that I get a lot, so I was curious if she was in it.
Are you Russian?
I'm not Russian.
Then it's not you. She plays a Russian. She's a KGB agent undercover.
I could be though.
I'll tell you what.
Maybe this is just my cover.
I might have to do a video on The Americans, even though it's a book channel, because like so many things about the show are amazing, and then there's like 10 to 20% that drive me insane. And it's like I complain every episode to Kelsey, and she's like, "We don't have to watch it." I'm like, "No, I love the show." Like, but I get so mad at the bad things. But it's a fantastic show.
I make content on Star Wars, which is not a book, and I don't care because I love Star Wars. So
I mean, there are Star Wars books.
There are Star Wars books, and I have read Star Wars books, so that is why it's okay.
Yeah. I think Star Wars, you definitely get a pass. Lantern Valley says, Dune is the epitome of a book I enjoy listening to people talk about rather than the book itself. That is one of the best utilities of YouTube. Is there are times where like Quinn's Ideas will drop a thing about a sci-fi book that I wasn't so hot on, and I'll watch him present it and talk about it, and I'm like, wow. And I'll go back and I'll try, and this is the same thing for Wheel of Time for me as well. I love listening to people talk about Wheel of Time. Another series this is happening with a lot is Ryan Cahill's series. People love that series. And when I hear people talk about it, I'm like, maybe I was wrong. And then I tried to start book 2 because everyone's like, book 1's read book 2. So like I read the like what comes before, and I was like, nope, I'm just going to have to listen to people talk about this book. No offense to Ryan Cahill. I'm just like
the worst when you hear people talk about things and you're like, man, I wish I felt that way because this sounds great. The way you're describing this sounds so fantastic, but it's not what I got from it.
Yeah, that's how I feel about college. That's all I ever heard about in high school is how sick college was. And then whenever I finally was able to get myself into a class, I was like, this is not what I was told this is.
Jimmy,
This is
I love
ridiculous.
college. I thought about going
You
back to get
you
a
would.
PhD just because it sounded fun, to study some more.
I mean,
Now that stopped.
there's nothing wrong with, like, studying and learning, but, like, I'm talking about the institution of college and everything
Mm,
that's wrong with it. And,
mm.
like, the variance of one class to the next class. And I go to this class and I feel so productive, and then I realize it has nothing to do with my major, and then I go to this other thing that is a part of my major, and the professor doesn't care. They don't have Blackboard set up correctly, and I'm just like,
Blackboard. Oh my gosh, that is something
"Oh."
I have not thought about in like a decade.
I was
Oh, I would rather
primarily
not think about
online.
Blackboard anymore.
I was
That's
primarily online. Uh I don't have endearing thoughts about Blackboard at all.
I don't either. You know, I
What would
was
you get a
I was a
PhD in?
TA for years. What?
What would you get a PhD in? I'm just
Well,
curious.
I mean, I got my master's degree in geotechnical engineering. So for a while I thought I'd work for a little bit and go back and just get a PhD because why not in geotechnical engineering. But then I did admit like not taking tests because I'm a huge stressor. Like I still have nightmares about test taking a decade later. So that would be the big reason. I like to learn. I don't know, just interesting. Like writing it was interesting. I learned a lot.
Hmm, that's really cool. I feel like if I
Mhm.
went back to school, it would definitely be for, like, writing,
Oh,
for
it'd be
sure.
for writing. Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
I've actually looked at the local community college here because,
Hmm.
like, you can take non-degree seeking classes, and last year, they had no, maybe it was 2 years ago, they had write your first novel class, and
Oh.
I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be sick," and I was like, "I'll do the next one because it was, like, right at the time, and I had stuff going on, and they don't offer it anymore,
Oh
and
my
I'm like,
gosh.
"Dang it."
Maybe it'll come back.
It's a poetry class now, and
No,
I used to write poetry. I don't have any interest in writing poetry anymore. I wanna write some very low budget fantasy. That
some
sounds very
novels.
fun.
Um,
I wanna write some drivel is what I
yeah, I
wanna
think now, like, if I thought about, like, going back to school for anything, it'd be for more, like, fun reasons. Like, I'd love to do, like, a culinary program. Like, wouldn't that be fun just to be like,
Yeah.
I went to, like, a 6-month culinary school and learned some cool stuff. Or, I don't know, like, I'd love because I make all of our own Halloween costumes, and I'm self-taught, so I'm terrible. And wouldn't it be fun to, like, take a sewing course out of college and actually like learn real things instead of YouTube stuff. Uh,
Yeah, I agree. I thought about doing a thing about, like, script writing. I thought that would be interesting for YouTube.
oh yeah, just like learn the craft. Like some of that's the stuff I'm like, wouldn't that just be kind of fun to have some of those skills? I it's funny, like maybe I should be more interested in like an editing class, but instead I rather just get rich enough to hire an editor instead of getting better at it. So that doesn't interest me as much.
I'll tell you what, so whenever I did my top 10 books of the year, it was right after I did my year-end awards, and I was like, "That video was 30 minutes. This one cannot be 30 minutes." Like, and I've already talked about a lot of these books, so how like, I kinda challenged myself, like, "Let's do 12 books in 12 minutes." And I gotta say, I did a little bit more editing, and I did a little bit more structure, and I found it very fun, and I'm like,
Mm.
"Maybe this is the challenge I need to put on myself because I have this platform to talk long." Like, maybe I should aim to make every video I do, like, within a certain amount of time. Not to the point where it's like a detriment to the conversation of what I'm trying
Right.
to do, but, like, challenge yourself to be a little bit more brief, James, like, go
Yeah.
for it.
I often have a timing in mind when I write my scripts. I think it can be very helpful. And when I go over, I sometimes find ways like, okay, well, what can I cut out?
Hmm,
What's repetitive? Like one of the things for me, I try super hard is to not say the same thing in more ways, like more than once.
mm,
And so if I am watching a video and I'm like, I've made that point twice now. This is not like productive. I can't always cut around it. Sometimes like you can't and I have to just leave it in, but I try really hard to cut around that stuff because like with booktube you already have such a problem of low retention because we don't have things to flash on screen. Like I don't have adaptations always to flash on screen. Sometimes it is just my face and there's only so much I can do to make that entertaining. So I try, to keep it
yeah.
concise. I'm not always great at it, but I
Well,
try.
one of the things about your videos is that you know, you have a topic, and usually you were talking about a lot of the more of the nuances and stuff. A lot of times when I talk about books, I'm trying to talk about what they're about, what I found that to work about them, and like who do I think it would go to, like who do I recommend this to?
That's the hardest video, I think. It's why I don't do it very often.
Well, there are times, especially talking in a non-spoiler fashion, where I'm like, I've used this phrase before, and there's only a certain amount of ways to say certain things. And what really has always bothered me is like, you know, repeating myself, which I know is surprising if you've listened to all 68 episodes of Chatting with Nuts, because there's certain things I repeat a lot. By the way, I should be applauded. I didn't give my Sansa Stark is the stand-in for the fantasy reader rant when we talked about Sansa.
Except the fact that I kind of want to hear it again, because now it's relevant to me. That's the problem. It's never been relevant before, so I didn't care.
Well, if you're asking,
now it's relevant. So it's like
the condensed version is that Sansa Stark, it was the typical, I shouldn't say typical, but like the prototypical, which is the same thing, I think, fantasy reader in the genre. Like when I said that George was having that conversation, Sansa expects the story to go the way fantasy often did go in a lot of the mainstream series. And her expectations are then crushed, and then she has to reform what is knightly, what is correct, what is good, what is evil. And the Hound is a huge piece of that puzzle. But in a lot of ways, all of her expectations and what she's naive about are things that have been set up in the genre, and George just kind of throwing them away. So she is like a fantasy reader that grew up, you know, reading certain stories. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about her character. So there, I still ended up repeating.
Oh, that's so good, because it means I can tell everyone that they just have self-hatred if they don't like Sansa. And I really like that, having that tool in my pocket to enrage people.
Just tell them they're sexist to move on. You know what I mean? Like, that's the easy thing.
I have so much I want to say, and I'm just holding back instead. So
I mean, I'm being sarcastic, kind of.
Oh, no. I know. There's a lot of sexism in fantasy spaces, like in fandom. And I find the A Song of Ice and Fire sexism very interesting, is all I'll say. Like it's different. It's different than other fandoms, but it's been very interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation around it. I mean, not to go full-fledged back into A Song of Ice and Fire, but like one of the misconceptions is that, and I still hear this to this day, is that George writes terrible female characters, and that's just simply, in my opinion, not true.
No, it is not true. I mean, all my favorite characters are female except Tyrion. He gets to be up there because, you know, obviously.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Who doesn't like him?
I just love the fact that he randomly does acrobatics in book 1 and then never does them again.
You know what? It's fine. Doesn't matter.
It's so ridiculous. Like when you read it back, you're like, what?
He was still finding his voice.
He did what?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I talked about this in my first video, because I said one of the things I was like worried about, obviously, was like body stuff, or sexism, I guess, sexual assault, whatever you want to call it in the book. And what I ended up saying was like, yeah, there were some body descriptions that I did not appreciate and were not my fave. But I said, like, the reason I can ignore them is because his female characters are just like so excellent. They are so well written. And so when people are telling me that they're bad, I'm like, is it because you just want them to be good? Like, you're okay with the male characters being like these super flawed, complex beings, but you can't offer the same sympathy or empathy towards the female characters who are doing the same thing. And that's what I think is very interesting about what I've been seeing. And not like you can't hate Catelyn. Like, I get it. It's fine. It's
just sometimes there's plenty of things the characters do that I object to, but like the way they're written, I love. Was
my favorite example to use. I've hijacked this conversation. Is this okay? Do you want to finish talking about what you were talking about before I don't
remember what I was talking about. You're good. Okay. Go off. Do your thing.
It's just, I got a comment on my video that said, basically, I don't know what kind of person you have to be to like Catelyn. Like, you're a bad person. You must be a bad mom that you like Catelyn. And what I responded
That's a wild thing to say to somebody, by the way. That's a crazy thing to say to a mother.
Well, it was crazy. And so I responded and I said, I this is all I said. I said, out of curiosity, I'd love to know who your favorite character is. Could not have been a better answer for me personally. It was Tywin.
Fucking what? What?
What? And like that to me is like a great example of sexism.
This person was trolling. They were. Was the name Mitch? Because I got a guy here, Mitch. He's the funniest guy in the world. If it was Mitch, he's trolling.
It didn't read like a troll. Jeremy, I'm so glad you understand the depth of this.
This being like Dahmer was wrong. My guy, Charles Manson. Like, it's like, wait, what?
And I never ended up responding after that. I just laughed for like 10 hours. But it was funny because that was on my Clash of Kings video. So I actually hadn't even read A Storm of Swords yet. And then I read A Storm of Swords and I was like, if you told me that I had two options, my options were I either had to be Jon with Catelyn as a mother, or I had to be any of Tywin's children, any of them, who I would choose to be. I would choose to be Jon, and it's not like even in the same universe of close. like I'm not saying the way Catelyn treats Jon is okay. It's not, and I talk about that a lot.
Yeah, certainly.
But the way that Catelyn treats Jon is a universe more preferable than the way Tywin treats any of his children. And so that's an extreme example, but it's hard. I didn't want to bring this kind of stuff up because I really hate the idea of like, you didn't like this character, you're sexist. Like that is the most unproductive thing you could ever say. But it's more like general things I have noticed is that we are a lot more forgiving to some of the male characters in here than we are to the female characters, who I just think are so dang good. Like my favorite female characters maybe of all literature are found in this series, you know.
You're making me happy.
You're welcome, Jamie. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I honestly think that A Feast for Crows is like where it's the best, actually. I've said that is a feminist book in many ways, and people look at me kind of sideways, but I think if you read it or even read it multiple times, I think you can kind of see where George R. R. Martin was going. I can't believe they said Tywin. Like, I'm stuck on this. Like, this is He Who Speaks Out says a White Walker is a better father than Tywin.
You know, actually, like Tywin surprised me because I will just say, like, his and Jaime's interactions were just not at all what I expected them to be. Like, crazy. When Jaime shows up, like in my head, and then what happens, it was just like, oh wow, that's not what I had in my head as happening, but okay.
I feel like there are scenes from the show that I would like to share with you that they actually did that were amazing.
You can. People have been sending me clips. So if you have a clip you'd love to show me, go ahead and send it.
We meet Tywin Lannister when Jaime walks up to him in a war tent, and Tywin doesn't even look at him, and he's cleaning a stag that he killed. And to this point, Jaime's been like the most arrogant, in control guy, like along with Cersei, right? And then Tywin is just this aura of Charles Dance being amazing, but he's just cleaning this stag the whole time he's doing it. It is such a good scene. Like, it is such a good scene.
People, so I have seen Jaime and Brienne in the baths.
So good.
Which was really excellent.
Yeah.
Leanna sent me the scene where they first meet Tully. What's Kat's sister's name?
Tully. Yeah, Lisa Tully.
Yeah, because I don't know if you know this, but when I read A Game of Thrones, I was like, she is psychotic. Like, she is the most unhinged character. Like, oh man. And so Leanna showed me like when they first meet her and she's like nursing her, like, I don't know how old he's, like 6 or something.
It's creepy.
Oh, nailed that scene. Just like so.
I want the little man to fly, mommy. Like, shut up. Throw him out the door.
Oh my gosh. Just like
that was the most Alan shut up of all time, by the way.
Oh, and I watched I watched a Dany scene that happens in A Storm of Swords where she beats down on some people because I was like, you know, I kind of want to see Emilia Clarke. And so I asked Kyle, I was like, how graphic is that? And he's like, it's really not graphic. And he sent me it, and I was like, yeah, that was as amazing as I pictured in my head. So perfect.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that they did nail. There's also just some TV specific scenes that are just like really incredible. There's a list. Actually, I think we made a list of them on Bend the Knee once. I'll have to look and see if I have it, and it has like links to them, and I could send that to you at some point.
Yeah, I'm not interested in watching it in general, just because I know it'll be too graphic for me. I'm just like such a baby.
Yeah,
But
I think the
I
books are
do like.
plenty.
Yeah, I do love when people send me like really good scenes, though. Speaking of female character, Brienne, gosh, I love her.
Goated, absolutely goated.
That was the only funny thing about watching the show is like she's supposed to be super ugly, and like the person is just like a very she's not. It's just like a very normal like, oh, you're not wearing makeup, but like you're not hideous. So
I'm pretty sure Gwendolyn Christie was a model at some point.
Yeah,
like she has a very symmetrical face, like very pronounced cheek, but like she's a beautiful woman.
She looks like just someone who's like they made dirty.
Yeah, she's just tall and doesn't have makeup on, and they were like that. Yep, that's not. I mean, Peter Dinklage is a complete Chad, like great looking guy. He's not supposed to be a great looking guy.
I know. I think I love the funny thing is like I had seen a lot of images of Dinklage, obviously, as Tyrion. So like when I read the books, he was what I pictured. Like that's already what was kind of in my head. So to me, it's so perfect, even though like I know objectively that's not what it should be. It's like he has probably way too much charisma and gravitas to really be book Tyrion. But I don't know. It's just what I picture.
Yeah, it's a lot of the casting was very spot on, and that's one of the hardest things, for fantasy shows in general to get right. It's one of the things that whenever Cosmere's adapted, like that will be one of the biggest challenges, and if you can nail that, you are in a lot of good faith, at least with the fandom.
Yes. And just knowing that like literally in every adaptation ever, everyone's more attractive.
Yeah, because we can't have people who look
Can
normal.
you imagine seeing an average looking person on screen? Ew. Could never. Ew.
Gross.
Who wants gross? He wants normal looking people.
Yeah, I would hate to be able to relate to people. Ew.
No. Can you imagine?
A question here from Sam. He said, Jimmy, should I read Justice of Kings or Forgetting Moon next? If you want epic fantasy, go Forgetting Moon. If you want a more personal narrative, I think Justice of Kings. Joanna said she recently had a dream that Bookborn was Hermione.
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 You say that with a nice little accent. Hermione.
I don't. I haven't read in a long time.
My 12-year-old self has never been happier. I believed I was her. So.
And Jarl said Quinn's videos are easily the most well made on BookTube. No offense, guys. I think he is beyond BookTube at this point, right? Like that's the guy that started out with the Song of Ice and Fire content exclusively for years and then branched out. And I always think that's really cool when people can kind of like remorph what they're doing. I think Media Death Cult has kind of done that. He's doing a lot of book hauls, book reviews and stuff. And now he's doing almost more like educational content in a way. And that's always cool. I am very envious of people who are able to do that because change is scary. Very, very scary. Yeah. Blackboard does suck, Garrick. And he says, YouTube Shorts reviews, let's go. I have thought about this, but I get a feeling that my audience would not like this. I think they would most likely, they'd probably do okay, but I'm known for long form. And I feel like if I tried to condense things down to that time limit, to that extent, I think people would react poorly.
It would just be a completely different audience. Like I have done like when I'm on a lot of like YouTube stuff and like your shorts viewers, they're like literally a different audience than your long form videos. And I think for me, it's like I have done some shorts usually when I'm kind of inspired. Like I have actually a Song of Ice and Fire short I'm planning. But they're usually like for specific reasons because I don't want to grow my channel on shorts because that's not the kind of content I want to make. So if I grow on there and then that's what people want and I don't want to make it, then what's the point? So my shorts now are more just like to be funny extras to the people who watch me. But yeah, I mean, if you're known for long form, like, do you really want to be stuck doing a bunch of 1-minute videos? I don't.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, honestly, for me, it's been more about chatting with nuts. Like that's what seems to work. People really like it. YouTube seems to also like it. I've had
You've been
I've had
getting like, yeah,
it's
you're
it's still
you're
going
too
off.
big for me now, Jimmy. Look at your views on these videos. Blowing me
I
out of the
did
water.
I did have my first year. This is and I don't look usually at the year recap, but I hit 1,000,000 views in a single year. I've had 1,000,000 views for a while, but like I hit 1,000,000 in this calendar year, I think.
That's insane.
I had to I need to double check that. So don't take me at my
No,
word.
I believe you. I absolutely believe you. That's incredible.
But I think that chatting with nuts is like what works. And
Mhm.
also, I really like doing this. I really like having these conversations. I always feel like I get a chance to kind of think things through and change my mind and fence it like I always do. But yeah, I don't know if shorts will ever be something I do. Gavin says I generally watch 5-hour videos regularly. I want to see more of it on booktube. I do as well. I watched an 8-hour iceberg video about CIA conspiracies the other day. Don't believe many of them, but I don't know why. I love those videos. I
I
watch
get it.
tons of videos. Uh, Rap documentaries are another thing, like anything from Chicago, South Side. Like I watch those. They're 8 hours long as well. Um, I don't know too many booktubers though that make content that long.
Maybe that's what we collab on, Jimmy. An
There it is.
8-hour A Song of Ice and Fire theory video where it's someone
Mm,
who really knows it and then me who doesn't know anything and we just see what happens.
that could be fun. You know, I guess on Ben the Knee's YouTube channel, which I feel like, you know, on the audio side, we have a very good audience, but on YouTube, we're still small. We did a 4-hour Dunkin' Egg iceberg video. And I actually love that video. It's really fun. It's like podcast clips that are clipped together. So I guess that could count. And also, Jared, thank you. That's very sweet of you. He said, Jimmy, you could pivot so easily. It's your personality that keeps people watching. You could talk about anything. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I am
Very sweet.
starting Dunkin' Egg tonight. It's on my nightstand. It's my next book.
Tonight. I wish it was next to you so you could read the first like sentence or
I
two.
almost brought it in here, but I was like, he's seen the cover. Why am I going to hold it up and
It's
see?
one of my favorite opening sentences in a story.
Oh, you made me so excited. I finished
Yep.
my book
Now if I
today,
hyped
this
it.
morning. So I was like, okay, my before bed reading, I get to finally start it.
I think that I might be overhyping it, but it's not because it's like catchy or like a lot of action happens, not this big hook that everyone feels like they have to do at the beginning of every single book now. But it's just the way it sets the scene and makes you ask a question, which I think is one of the best things you can do with like a first sentence. For instance, there was a knock at the door. That's a great opening sentence because you're like, who's knocking at the door? Are we at home? Are we at a hotel? Are we in a cabin in the woods? What are we doing? And the first sentence of Dunkin' Egg immediately is like, what?
You know what? It's funny because I feel like a lot of first liners that are very famous and people love, like I don't necessarily love.
Hmm.
Um, sometimes I feel like they're trying too hard. I hate when I read a book and I'm like, you really wanted that first sentence to hit and you tried really hard, and I can tell. And maybe I'm annoying, but now I don't like it very much because it's trying too hard. But anyway, what you're saying is like I do sometimes there's unassuming first lines, but are like, what? And those are my very favorite.
Yeah, it's more about
Very
what it
favorite.
accomplishes. It literally tells you like the setting, the time of year, and events that may have just transpired, but you don't know why of any of it. And you're just like, okay, we're in. Let's
Let's
go.
do
Where
it.
are we going?
That's
Where are
good.
we going? It is a much more quiet tone than the main series. And I think specifically for you, you will appreciate it quite a bit. I think you're gonna
Yeah,
have a lot of fun with it.
I am excited to start Feast for Crows so I can prove everyone wrong that I don't hate it because I'm convinced I'm gonna like it.
You're gonna like
Um,
Feast for Crows.
yeah, I would just be really surprised if I didn't. Just from what I've heard. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I don't really know. But just like the people I know who like it and generally know me and what I like.
Hmm.
People being like, it's so boring. I just don't feel like I get bored a lot in books. So someone saying something's boring never scares me personally.
Yeah, I think I could see like loving Feast, and then I'll be curious about Dance.
It seems
If you
like
and
nobody likes dance. So
I love it. And so
Okay,
hold on.
okay.
This is a our sphere type thing. My sample size in Bend the Knee and other communities is much larger. There are a ridiculous amount of people, their favorite books of Dance with Dragons. Like the
Oh,
big
okay.
debate that I've seen in the fandom and in these other spaces is a Dance with Dragons or a Sword of Swords. Which one's better? Like the
Okay.
hate
So
for
on
Feast.
YouTube, that is not. All I have is people telling me I'm gonna hate the last 2 books, and I didn't
Yeah,
believe them, but
it was a little jarring to me whenever like I started this thing and started talking to people. It was very jarring to me because like I had not heard that opinion and I was very into it and talked to a lot
mm,
of people about it. Um, but there's a lot of stuff that is much different in this sphere because people read so many books. And one of the things that I feel like people have a little less patience for books at times
mm,
because they want to get to the next book and the next book and the next book. Whereas people, I think, who kind of settle in on something, it's like if you ask like a Wheel of Time fan who can tell you good things about the slog, because that's something that they spent time with. And the most quiet moments, maybe with those characters, are actually the ones that they remember and then they got things out of. I've never read it, so I can't comment on it. But, you know, there's also a lot of people who don't like it. And
yeah,
then usually it
I'm
tends to
definitely
be,
like the slog, there's parts of the slog that, man, they are just not necessary to me, and I will say that. But I will say, like, a lot of those things I appreciate because in the end, they did make a lot of character moments um, more meaningful. So, like, for me, I like a book that takes some time. Oh, good, look at all these people who love dance. One thing that did surprise me is because I actually already picked up Feast. Anytime I'm in like the thrift store, I go try to find them since it's a very easy book to generally find thrifted because it's so popular. And anytime something's really popular, it's just like easier to find.
yeah.
So I so I saw it, so I picked it up already. And one thing that really surprised me about Feast was that it was so much shorter than A Storm of Swords.
Yeah.
Because when everyone was telling me like, "Oh, it's so boring, you're gonna hate it," and I'm like, "It's like 350 pages shorter." Like I was expecting to be this like tome, and I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be nothing."
Yeah, and also it has the unfortunate duty of following A Storm of Swords. I mean, and that's just,
Yeah, and I get that.
you have to come down to go back up. That's
But
just
here's the
how
thing:
it
I
works.
don't want to read A Storm of Swords again. No, not like that. I mean, I want
I
to
know what
reread
you
it,
mean.
but I mean,
I know
I
what you
don't want the next book to be A Storm of Swords again. I can't. I don't. I couldn't survive it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, like, let me come down a little bit
Yeah, I
from
think there's a lot of reframing that happens, and there's a lot to love there, I think. So, I think
that.
you're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, I think and I've told people this. I was like, one of the most interesting things about coming into the fandom at the time I'm coming into is there's just so much bitterness. And what happens with bitterness is it makes you look back on things you enjoyed a lot of the times and you convince yourself you never really enjoyed them. It's
Hmm.
something for totally different reasons. Like I see this a lot in the Harry Potter fandom because obviously people, J.K. Rowling's Twitter is just not great. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so then people have this thing like, well, Harry Potter was never good. And it's like, well, those things aren't correlated in any sort of way. And it's like, so now that Martin hasn't written the book, now all of a sudden people are like, well, it actually, A Song of Ice and Fire wasn't that good. And it's like, again, those things are unrelated. Just because he's not finishing the series does not all of a sudden make us have to go back and rewrite history.
Yeah, each year from the television show, it always went back a season. Like everything was good till season 8. Everything was good till season 7. Everything was good till season 6. And now people are all the way back down to season 2, I've seen. This is the nature of things. People for various reasons and sometimes very justified get upset at creators and then, you know, that's how people process it, I think, or maybe it's a way of getting it out and venting frustration.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anybody who, like, for instance, if someone like loved the song of Ice and Fire, but feels like it not being finished has ruined it for him. I don't think anybody enjoys not enjoying those things anymore. I think it's almost like a display of like pain from it
For
in a
sure.
way.
For sure. I am just surprised so many people said they wish they'd never read it.
Yeah.
I had a failed video. I really tried to write a script on it and it didn't come together. I want to revisit, but just like what kind of personalities do endings matter a lot for? Because no one
Mm.
believes me. That's not true. People believe me, but every video, people are like, see, don't you regret it? Aren't you so mad there's no ending? And I was like, no, I literally don't care. Like, if I never read another thing, like all Feast for Crows and Winds of Winter got burned, every copy got burned today. Like, great.
Yeah.
I just read like 2 4.5 stars and a 5-star book. Like, I'm not going to go cry my eyes out about it. Like, I'll just be maybe slightly less emotionally damaged.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people who just want to know what happens next. I mean, there are those people. I have found.
I totally get that. I'm not saying it's not sad. I'm just saying it's weird that we're throwing out the whole experience.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, I have found things about that have nothing to do with the ending that I find to be just fascinating. As I'm reading Book of the New Sun and I'm in the final volume of it, I'm just thinking about this journey I've been on with Severian, and I'm like, I don't even necessarily know if I mean, I do care what happens at the end, but like that will not be probably what I think about. I think what I think about will be, how it maybe it recontextualizes the rest of the series. But there's just like so many weird and off the wall moments, and like that series has been a journey and ups and downs, and just like, I mean, nothing that I've read ever quite like it. And this is another example for me is where like the ending, even if it were end up being kind of disappointing, would not change the experience I've had along the way. That's been, well, one of a kind, really, and really special.
I mean, because you've been into it forever.
Oh, yeah, Song of Ice and Fire? Yeah. I mean,
when did you read the first one? How old were you?
It was my 20s.
Okay. I for some reason thought you read it as a teen.
No, I wasn't like 16, 15 or 16. Unfortunately, I wish that'd have been awesome. I'd have been so annoying.
I think I read it at the time I needed to read it. You know what I mean? Like, I think if I had read it when I first started reading adult fantasy in my early 20s, I wouldn't have been ready for it. It would have been too much for where I was at the time.
I think meeting a book where you're at the time, like there are books that you fall, like I always say this about Malazan. If I had read Malazan 4 years ago, good night, Irene. There's not a chance. Not a chance. If I tried to read Blood Meridian 5 years ago, not a chance. I've been very fortunate, in a lot of ways, but also there's books that maybe I'll have to revisit, at a later time too. Are there any series that were like written off for you that now you're considering? Because like obviously A Song of Ice and Fire was a bit of a reversal. Not that you hated it, but you were like, it's probably not something I'm going to try. Is there anything else on the horizon that you're like, maybe?
Let me think about that. This is embarrassing. I have to go to the restroom so bad because I just drank a whole thing of water. You want to talk to people and I'll think about that question and then come back.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our more intimate time of the evening. This is Nuts After Dark. No, I'm drinking out of a Cabo. Someone asked me if I was drinking out of a hurricane glass. This stream is sponsored by Cabo Wabo Cantina in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. They're on the Strip, center stage, right next to Planet Hollywood. Actually, I believe, are closing Cabo, so they won't sell these glasses anymore. It makes me kind of sad. Folks, I just finished a book that I for those out there who are like reading things outside of the fantasy genre, I just read a book called Ohio by Stephen Markley. I think that's his name. And I highly recommend it. If you grew up in the good old Appalachian Mountains or in the Rust Belt, I think it is. I mean, if you want to relive a lot of the traumas of growing up in that area, it is a very dark and disturbing book, but it is one of multiple POVs reuniting in a hometown many years after high school, and the sadness and the impressions of high school and the trauma of that following them. And everyone, it's almost like a convergence, but also truths being seeked out in this convergence. And it is a really compelling read. So if any of you are lit fic fans out there, I highly recommend it. Stephen King's a big fan of the book, and I actually think it has a lot of the strengths that Stephen King has whenever we talk about town building and him understanding small town America. I think this guy has a knack for a town in Ohio or Rust Belt, Appalachian Mountain, whatever. I think he has an idea, and it has a lot to do with people being affected by 9/11, the Iraq War, and obviously the Great Recession. So this was my commercial for Ohio by Stephen Markley.
Was the conversation so much better without me here? Okay.
No, I just started talking about literary fiction and everyone just logged off. Like the numbers, they dropped.
Perfect. That's a great question. A Song of Ice and Fire was the series that I was never going to read. So it's so bizarre. Like, I still sometimes, like, I cannot believe not only am I like reading this series, but I am feeling obsessed. Like, it's just been so long since I felt that way.
Yeah.
I feel the same way that I did when I first read Stormlight. This, like, oh, this is going to be a thing. Like, this, like, I am now going to be deep in this. Like, there's no going back anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. There's a lot to still be done. Me and Matt on Bend the Knee just a few weeks ago found something that we've never found before. I've read through the book 6 or 7 times. I never noticed this thing, and it's like a really interesting talking point. And we had a whole episode about it. So there's still things to get excited about.
Yes. I just feel like, anyway, so it's kind of hard to compare it because I feel like those kind of series come around so rarely. And it's so crazy to me that I'm already putting it up with like some pretty influential for me in my life series, because it just like, I feel like it changed my DNA when I read, when the event that happens at the end of a Game of Thrones happened, there was a before me and there was an after me. And
wow, that's profound. I love that.
And I would just like to say I am a Stark girl, so through and through. Like, that is what I've figured out. There's all these more interesting people. They are Lannister people, and they are, Targaryen. I can never say that word. Whatever. Dany's people, whatever.
Targaryens.
I am Team Stark. Forever. It doesn't matter. I don't care at this point.
Where would you live in Westeros if you could move there?
I would not live in Westeros.
Why not?
was my final answer.
It's beautiful over there in Highgarden, I hear, this time of year.
I'd live up where Lysa lives, just up there with the moon doors and I'm just kidding. I would not. I
mean, the Vale's description is one of the most epic descriptions in a book. I really love that area.
So great. Yeah, anyway, so series. And I don't feel like I can think of anything else that I really just thought I wasn't going to read. Here we go. There's one book that I really don't want to read. Maybe you'll convince me. It's a J. Kristoff book.
I don't think you'll. You know what? Try it. I don't think you'll like it.
I don't either. And so I think that's the thing. Is like, I read A Song of Ice and Fire because people I trusted were like, you will like this book. Like, it was you and Leanna and Kyle, and you three are not people who would be like, I want you to read this just because I like it.
Mm-hmm.
You just told me, you're like, you probably shouldn't read the J. Kristoff book. I don't
see. Yeah, and here's the thing, like, I'm a big fan of like experience it for yourself and see what happens, because but I also understand we all look for reasons to write things off, because like, let's be honest, all of our TBRs are way too damn long. Like, they're all too long. I will write people off for the most pettiest of reasons. I'm like, oh, what? They shopped at Trader Joe's on a Wednesday. They're gone off the TBR. Not reading them. So I do think, my actual answer is like, hey, try it. My gut feeling, though, is probably that you would not enjoy it. I try to be very accurate or fair with my recommendations. I like having a good track record. I get sad when people don't like something that I recommend. It literally upsets me. Not mad at them, but mad at myself. I'm like,
I want people to like what I give them. So
yeah,
I don't want you to read what I like and not like it. But so Empire of a Vampire. The reason I saw his review he wrote of Empire of a Vampire.
Tongue in cheek. I think he's.
I completely understand. I understand that it was written facetiously. I understand that. I cannot explain like a bigger turnoff than that thing that I read, and I just thought I will not like this book.
I've never read Empire of the Vampire, so I can't comment that. I read Nevernight.
Okay, so maybe that's different.
So it could be totally different. I'm actually still gonna try it one day. I own it, so why wouldn't I? Frank wants to know, Jimmy, who do you think you should finish A Song of Ice and Fire if Grim doesn't? I would say Daniel Abraham, but he has apparently said it on record that he will not. So nobody probably is the answer. Actually, if someone does finish it, it'll probably be someone you've not heard of. That's my guess. because he has a lot of writers that he edits for that are up and coming, and I think he would want to hand it to someone who isn't established yet.
I mean, according to him, he doesn't want anyone to finish it.
Yeah, he has changed his tune a little bit.
Oh, has he?
Yeah, he was reflecting on one of his friends that passed, and had some sort of series open, and he was like, I'm wondering if maybe someone could pick it up and finish it, which is before something he was not a big fan of.
No, because I did research for a video like ages ago.
Yeah.
About that.
I remember that video because no one watched and they got mad at you in the comments and were like, no, Brandon Sanderson shouldn't finish it. You're like, I never said that. You didn't watch the video.
Actively, no, he shouldn't.
Your comment section is actually as entertaining as your videos, if I'm being honest. I read through all of the comments on your historically accurate violence against women, which, by the way, did you have to do like a shot of tequila before you did that? Like, were you like, here we go, this is not going to be fun?
Well, my shot of tequila was doing some healthy habits, which is forcing myself not to read the comments as they came in and to wait a day and then read the top rated comments. And then I would answer the comments until I hit ones that were mean. And then I stopped for my own. And that was hard. I used to respond to every comment for years, no matter how many there were. And now I get enough just totally stupid, rude comments that, like, unfortunately, I can't be in the comment section as much as I used to be. I still try to respond to a lot. But unfortunately, I kind of have to avoid.
Yeah. I had to learn that lesson on Dudes Talking Manga channel with the One Piece stuff. When you're getting 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000, you get some people in there that are not kind. I'm fortunate enough here that I don't have to worry about that. I don't get as many.
And just the nature of the videos, who's going to come leave like something really rude on Chatting with Nuts? It'd be so weird.
Oh, it happens every now and then. But for you tackling that subject with nuance, bravo to you.
Hard. The problem is that if people who want to have like open conversations about this stuff stop, then what is left on the internet is these extreme opinions. And so like the thing that keeps me going is like, I just can't let this devolve into it has to be A or B. Like there is like this middle ground where we can address, because like I got some pretty angry comments on a Game of Thrones, my video, which if you watch it is pretty much me just saying how much I loved this book and what a mind-blowing experience it was. But I do spend like a minute and 30 seconds talking about George's body stuff, or even actually I just said I wasn't going to read it. People were angry that I didn't want to read it because it was going to be too graphic. Like people were so angry. And I was just like, I didn't say you shouldn't read it.
Yeah, I've never understood that. I've never understood that.
It shouldn't exist. I just thought that I wouldn't like it. Yeah. And, I can't let them win. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't let these people win.
You still got that fire inside.
You can't win. We can have normal conversations about things. But I do think the Wheel of Time haters did win, unfortunately. I do not think I will be covering season 3 of Wheel of Time. They won. They defeated me. So I hope they're happy.
TV is different. When we did House of the Dragon on Bend the Knee.
Did you get rude comments about House of the Dragon?
Yes.
Oh no, Jimmy. Talk to me. I can understand.
Oh, I just don't check the comments because
it got that bad.
Okay. Yeah, it was bad. It was real bad. And the funny thing is that the reception of the show was very positive, but it was like things people were upset about were just so dumb. Like I just could not relate. And then I struggle, and we were in live streams. I can't hold my tongue because I'm passionate about it. So I'm like going on these diatribes and dunking these people, and then they're like coming back, and I'm like, this is so toxic. I need to stop. This is bad. The TV crowd can be intense. By the way, Jared, thank you for the 10 spots. Very kind.
More lit fic. What lit fic are we going to talk about?
I have been reading a lot of lit fic lately, though I'm still reading tons of fantasy. I'm actually going to read book 2 in Justice of Kings soon, and I'm reading my first Murakami novel, which kind of like is in both realms.
What book are you reading?
The Wind Up Bird Chronicle, and we're 3 chapters in, and there's already been some really weird women stuff that I'm like not so sure about.
Yeah, it's so funny because I first read Murakami in high school, And that book I actually like consider as a very formative book. Not Wind Up Bird Chronicle. A Wild Sheep Chase is the one that my senior English teacher had us read.
Mm.
I actually consider it like one of like the 10 very influential books in my life. And I read like a short story collection, and then I didn't read them for years. And then you saw me and Leanna. I was like, oh, we should do Norwegian Wood. It's his most famous. And it was just like horrible. Like,
Yeah, so you guys did not have fun with that.
I was like, and it was so funny because Leanna was like, I don't want to tell that I don't like it because and I was just like, Leanna, I did not know this is what it's going to be. So I have a very complicated relation with Murakami. I'm kind of scared to read his other stuff. I just like to keep my memories of A Wild Sheep Chase where they are. And what was it? What did you recommend her?
Oh, Song for Our Bond. I literally messaged Joanna by Geiger. Okay, I go, this will be your best book of the year. I think I said that. I think I said it I said this, if not the best, it'll be your top 3. And it was her best
Ooh,
book of the year. Yeah.
that's so nice. Oh,
Yeah.
didn't you feel so proud of yourself?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know Joanna very well. We're very close. So I knew I was spot on. Like there was no way I was missing that one. And I'm also really good at recommending books to Alan if he would read them. But like when I get a book in Alan's hands and he reads it and I have recommended it, generally has led to him finding like a new favorite author. Just saying.
Alan has ADHD. You can't blame him. You can't give him a recommendation. He's never going to take it.
Alan lives to fight against the influence, and I respect it. I get it. Zach Argyle, a famous self-pub author here, says, an author you never plan to read, Mark Lawrence?
Well, but that's different. I read it because Mark sent me the book, and then I loved it. And so now I'm like, I guess I will go read Mark's other stuff. But I'm still not going to read Prince of Thorns. That's a book I said I would never read, and I'm staying strong on that. Did you read Prince of Thorns, Jimmy?
I have not, but I'm so curious to try it because I've heard a lot of people use Severian as an example from Book of the New Sun. A lot of people say this is what Severian like is not, meaning that like Jorg from that book is a bad example of how to do a problematic protagonist. I'm open-minded to trying it out. I tried the second series that's like connected to that because it was on the Patreon wheel, and I thought it was just okay. And I didn't really like Lawrence's writing very much. So I will try it because I actually own it. I own the trilogy because I bought it like way back when. Because like whenever you look up a list of like things like A Song of Ice and Fire, it's in the top 10 every time. So I bought it and I will try it one day. I'm actually a little bit more interested in that the book that wouldn't burn.
That was my top book of the year.
Yeah, but it's in an academy setting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got at least another year before I'm not burnt out on academy settings. Like I gotta wait. But I'm very interested in that one because I saw people who had the same opinion of me about Red Queen's War, Prince of Fools, I think, or something. They had the same opinion and they loved that book. And I'm like, okay, that could be interesting.
People told me, I mean, Zach told me under no circumstances could I read Prince of Thorns. He read it and was like, you absolutely cannot read this. And that is someone I trust to tell me what I cannot read. So I won't ever read that. It's going to be just too dark. But Red Sister is what people tell me to read. So that's probably the one. Yeah,
I've heard that. Like actually, before the book that wouldn't burn, I always heard that to be like the work people recommended to read.
The next Mark I'll probably read is that the second book of that book that wouldn't burn series is coming out in April. So
yeah, it's soon. There's a lot of books coming, book 2s and book 3s coming out this year. I really need to get to Richard Swan's Tearing a Face so I can read the final book that comes out in February. I don't know if I'll be able to read it on release, but we'll see. Devin Madsen also, who wrote We Ride the Storm. I never continued that series, but she has a new book coming out in June or July. And it has a dragon in it, so I'm probably gonna read that. I'm real excited about that.
You see a dragon and sign you up.
It's simple. Jarl says Bookborn has responded to a few of my comments, and I appreciate it. Jarl, you always leave very thoughtful comments.
I mean, I used to respond to every comment. I try to respond a lot. The thing I don't love about where my channel is right now is that I mostly respond to early comments by nature of protecting myself. And that sucks because I just know people are saying some great things. And every once in a while, when I feel like in a good mood and I go and check my comments, just, you know, how you see them in like the studio, you know, and I'm reading, I'm like, people are just leaving like such great stuff. And they'll be like, oh, I'm so late to this video. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to be able to like engage with you when you're 2 years late to a video. I appreciate that so much. And so that's been hard. It's hard.
Yeah. I've gotten some super thoughtful, well-written comments that I didn't see for a while on Dudes Talking Manga because of like trying to avoid it. But I always appreciate it whenever I can see it. I just feel bad about the ones I know I'm missing. You know,
Oh, yeah.
those are the ones that bother me. But you have to protect yourself from them if you want to stay sane. I just don't have I have decently thick skin, but dude, if you have literally triple digit people calling you the R word, you start to go, like, am I dumb? Like, is there something wrong with me? You know what I mean? I'm like, maybe I actually am just completely inept and can't actually,
And
you know what I mean?
it's also like for me, it's a lot about like calling me names doesn't usually get to me.
Mm,
I've had some very choice names thrown at me. It's the being misunderstood. It's when people write me a comment that
misframing.
so willfully misinterprets what I'm saying. That's what literally like I will be awake at night being like that person just like totally twisted what I said. And that is what actually weirdly gets me riled up. Call me names, well,
Yeah,
whatever. Just tell me that I said something that I did not say, and I will never stop thinking about
that was basically what the issue was
what
with
that is.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with
That's
the
exactly what it is. It's
the
not that
people
they're
weren't
calling you
listening.
the name. It's that you're now questioning, like, did I say that? Did I not understand it?
Yeah,
Am I not smart enough for
yeah.
this?
I
Um,
almost made a response video where I like was gonna address comments, and then I was like, that is a slippery slope. I was like, I can't do that. I can't do it. So then I just didn't
there's
post
so
for
many
2.5
times
months.
I always tell Zach this. I'm like, Zach, I get a gold star today because I wrote out a really long 2-paragraph reply. And then I stood there and I went delete, 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 close out. Give me my gold star. I just walked away.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I fall for it and I end up replying. But
I do
I
too.
will say this: this channel, I do get some comments that maybe more this year than ever because the channel's grown.
Because you're
But
growing.
but for the most part, it's been um, fairly solid. Um, it's interesting being on the Lost and Roshar podcast because I'm a bit critical of Sanderson. So like sometimes we get emails asking for me to be removed from the show, which is very mean. And
I need a dramatic reading of an email saying, please remove this person from the show.
yeah, people get really upset with me because I haven't read all the Cosmere and like I don't like a lot of the Cosmere, but I kind of love it if I'm being honest. Like it's like I can't go away. And like they'll be like, Christian, can you get rid of this sidekick?
But it's like
it's,
it's so funny to me because I feel like that's got to be such a more compelling way to do the podcast
it's
because
yes,
there's
definitely.
so many podcasts for Sanderson right now, right? And so many of them are going to be super fans. So having like you know,
Yes.
having that contrast, I think probably makes the discussion a lot more interesting.
I
Um,
know Christian appreciates it because, he's coming at it because he knows everything. Like Christian
yeah.
he is the Alt Shift X of Stormlight Archive.
He
Like,
built, I mean, he built his channel originally around that, like,
yeah.
knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, and he has like actually had theories or found stuff that like he found. Like he created it.
Right. He's one of those making the theories. Yes.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
is as legit come, but I come at it from like I read a lot of books. I like thinking about themes and characters, so it's a really good mashup, between us. But it's just funny, some people get like I'll be like, yeah, Alloy of Law shouldn't have been published, and people just get so turned
Okay, but
up.
see, like, why are they getting mad about that? Because so many Sanderson fans are like, yeah, Alloy Blah is not great. Like
Well, a
it
lot of
wasn't.
people do mail in, and they say I agree, but then there's the 5 or 6 that are
Yes.
just like
And they're
I'm
just
gonna
so rude about it. They're not touching grass.
yeah. We
Yeah,
we have
it is
we have a lot
funny.
of really nice people over there. I should make that clear.
Yeah, I mean, majority of the people are great. That's the thing. The majority is great. It's just sometimes it's really hard because the negative comments um just can feel so overwhelming. And like you do question like I will sometimes be like I should quit like I'm too stupid to read books. Like you read enough comments and you're just like I'm stupid. Like I guess I thought I knew stuff and I don't. I don't. So
I'm convinced. I know I'm stupid. I just hope that people will give me permission to just continue to talk. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm not an authority in any facet. I gotta bring this up. We've been talking about Song of Ice and Fire so much, which is wonderful for me. You're like a Sandersonian, as I dubbed you earlier. What about the Sanderson update, by the way? As someone who loves Stormlight Archive, finding out that it's going to be like 8 to 10 years before the book 6, are you at all like upset about this? Because like
Nope.
it made me like, I had to look at mortality. I had to look it in the eyes. And I was like, in 8 to 10 years, I'm going to be in my 40s. And then, who knows how long I'm like, am I going to be alive when this thing finishes? Like,
I think it's more important to know if Sanderson's going to be alive. I think like there are people who have joked, like, this is so horrible, but they're like, can we buy him a dietitian, a personal trainer, a doctor, like just make sure we're nipping anything in the bud right there. Like, just anyway, yeah, it's hard to just be like, wow, 10 years. But then like, also I get it, and we'll have Stormlight 5. So
we'll just reread that.
But it's like it's an ending. Like, I know, because we always knew it was gonna be split up. So like, I was surprised it was 10 years. But then when I really thought about it, I'm like, the recent Stormlight books have taken them closer to 3 to 4 years to finish.
Yeah.
So really, it's just kind of like 2 cycles. Like, right? He's just letting like an extra cycle go past, which like, when you look at it that way, it makes sense. And I just feel like he must be so fatigued from Stormlight.
Yeah, but it feels like he's just been working on all these other things. And by the way, I'm coming at this bias because like, I care about Stormlight.
Stormlight's your thing. That's the thing, right? Like, Stormlight is your series.
It's the thing he has done that I love. You know what I mean? And everything else has been up and down. And so here's the thing. I didn't realize that book 5 was this much of a conclusion. And what I mean by that is like, there's truly 2 different arcs. Like, we could almost call it Stormlight Archive 1 and Stormlight Archive 2.
Like Era 1 and Era 2.
And that is like, yeah, I guess I just didn't think it was going to be that drastic of a separation. But it seems like it will be,
so
right?
It's from what we know, all of the characters who like survive Stormlight 5 would still be alive. Like, so we don't think it's going to be like a giant age gap. We're not sure. That might have updated. But yeah, I expect it to be like a decent conclusion. Is what I'm expecting.
Yeah, I just looked at that schedule and I just saw all these things, and then like I was like, okay, where? Because if people remember, it was either last year or the year before, Sanderson actually had said it was going to be a 5-year gap between the next Stormlight book, and then so to read it that to be 10, it was just like mind-boggling to me. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's interesting. Someone's saying it's foolish of him to plan his life like that, but I think he thrives on that. I think, I don't think it will be when he thinks it is. I think there's a chance it could be earlier or later. But like,
well, I mean, even book 5 has been
later.
Yeah.
It was delayed by a year. But the thing about, like, I understand it. Like, he felt so free apparently writing the 4 Secret projects. And I think sometimes you just have a personality where like, I think he needs a break from Roshar. And he basically said that. He said like he wants to be excited to go back to Roshar. And I just think it'll be a better book if but there's a chance, like, the thing with Sanderson is there's a chance like in 5 years, he's like, well, actually, time to write Stormlight 6. Because I mean, he is probably going to have to start let's say it's, because he said 8 to 10 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like 8 to 10. Yeah.
So let's pretend it's 8.
Okay.
That means he's starting to write it in 4 years, right? Like, these books have been taking him 4 years to write. And like, we're used to Sanderson writing really quickly, so that seems strange. But like, for a normal author, like 2 to 3 years to write a book is normal.
I know, I totally agree. And
you're right. I totally understand where you're coming from. I was more surprised how gobsmacked everybody was.
Well, I was gobsmacked because he had been saying 5 years. And one thing about Sanderson is he's been pretty reliable.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's not reliable now, but this is a change.
It was a change.
And then selfishly, and I can say this, and I'm not saying I'm right, but like I look at all the other things he's working on, I'm like, could we not? Like, could we just not do any of that? And I will say this, and David brought this up, the man tried to tell us that writing those 87 secret novels didn't take away from writing Stormlight 5. I think it obvious that it had some sort of impact, whether or not it was him kind of realizing that maybe he wanted to do something else, or also, just taking that time. So I'm just like,
well, here's the thing, Jared. I'm just responding to another comment. It says Sanderson would be better off if he slowed down and if he dropped everything that isn't Stormlight, but he wouldn't be. He wouldn't be. I mean, you're probably being facetious, so I'm sorry. He's
definitely being a little tongue in cheek. Yeah,
I totally get the tongue in cheek, but people say that seriously, and it's like, but it wouldn't be because he doesn't want to do it. And so like, it's so interesting because this is a dude who, when you talk, like, he is happier writing, but I think sometimes just needs to take the wins of what he wants to write. And I think like clearly something about writing Stormlight 5 made him be like, I need 10 years before the next one comes out. And I don't know, I feel like he can't, it doesn't work that way. It's like telling George Martin, just go lock yourself in a room and just write A Dance for Dragons, George.
Winds of Winter.
It's so simple. Winds of Winter. Sorry.
Okay.
A Dream for Spring is the last one. I get them confused.
Or Dunkin' Egg 4. I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with Fire and Blood 2 at this point.
Sit down, George. If you just wrote 4 hours a day, that's it. Just 4 hours a day, it'd be done. Like, if it was that easy.
See, this is my hot take. I want more Stormlight / Roshar extended content. I would love a Fire and Blood of Roshar. I don't know if Sanderson could write it. I don't know if that's his bag, but I would love it. I love Stormlight. I love Roshar. I think it's so fascinating. I think it's fun to get lost in, hence the name Lost in Roshar. But, at the end of the day, he has huge aspirations and goals that I think he's been fairly transparent about with the Cosmere. So it's not like I'm like mad at him, but selfishly,
I totally get it.
I'm like, dang, I kind of wouldn't mind if these other things weren't being worked on.
I mean, my favorite Sanderson was Warbreaker. And one time at a signing, I asked him when that sequel was coming out. This was like really early on in San Francisco. We just went to a signing and he laughed. So like, I just feel like I don't feel very sorry. Like, he's basically said before, like, if there's a Warbreaker sequel, it'll be one of the last things in the Cosmere. And so it's like, and I made peace with that. It's so easy for me to make peace with it. I don't know why. Like, that's what I'm saying with like A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, people, I made peace with it before I started. So I made peace with it. And now I'm over it. It surprised me a little bit. 10 years did feel longer. I would have expected like 6. 6 sounds more what I probably would have expected.
Yeah, and I think so. When Jared was making his comment about slowing down, I actually don't think he's really slowing down. I think he's just working on other things. And I think like most likely Stormlight 6 will probably be written in the same time frame of which he wrote the other Stormlight books as well, like time to write. It's literally just that he's putting off the project so he can work on these other things that he's interested in. I shouldn't say that. I mean, that makes it sound like he like punted it completely. That's not the truth either. So
yeah, and I get it though, because there's a lot of stuff he's doing that like I'm not interested in. Particularly like, did you read the Skyward series? No, okay, I think so. I was pretty sure you didn't.
Come on now.
But I didn't want to sound stupid. He did these novellas as a part of that series with another author, who's a white author.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Everyone loved him. I did not. Was not for me. And so at Dragonsteel, they announced that she'll be doing like a second, like the next series in that universe. And like 100%, I was like, well, I won't be reading that. Like I have zero interest in reading that after those novellas. And so like that is hard sometimes when I know his time will be going to something I'm just like fully uninterested in participating in. Like I do get it, but I think like having followed him for so long and like watching the streams and watching how he talks, I have just recognized that it's something that he needs for himself. And so I've made peace,
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm all about people working on what they want to work on. You know, people get on George a lot because he does other things, which is where he kind of get unfairly grouped in with like Patrick Rothfuss. Like Patrick Rothfuss simply like really isn't working on anything other than Twitch streaming, which is fine. He can do whatever he wants.
Yelling
But
at people on stream, but
yeah,
anyway.
but George Martin has been writing. It's just not he's not writing the things that I necessarily want. But again, I'm okay if he just writes things in the Song of Ice and Fire universe. And you know, Sanderson's writing Cosmere stuff. So Elantris 2, I think, was on that list. I'm pretty
Well, I
interested in
think
Elantris 2.
I don't think our next Cosmere is coming until
It's like
the Rock novella. I think
I
that's
think
the whole point.
it's 4 or 5 years, right?
Yeah, it's like no Cosmere for like 5 years.
Yeah. Now that is interesting to me.
But he did give us 3 Cosmere books in the same year. So like if you just spread those out.
But he could have not done that. That would have been okay. I didn't love the secret novels though. I'm a hater.
I
We
really
both hate the
loved
poop
one.
chapter, so that's a good thing.
Really enjoyed. Well, I actually really loved Tress, and I enjoyed, despite its flaws, enjoyed Yumi. The other 2 were to me, but
yeah, Yumi, I liked a lot of Yumi, but there was things about it that like kind of brought it down. And then Tress was just fine for me. The poop story chapter sent me on a complete rampage, and I was yelling at a target. It was really bad.
I mean, I said that on record. I doubt you watched the Sanderson book clubs. Like, why would you? But I like on that. I said that chapter was literally the most horrible chapter I've ever read. Like, I said that right there in his lair that I hated
love
that
that for
chapter
you.
with my full chest.
Let's go.
Because it was disgusting. And you know what? Murphy was on my side, so it was fine.
I didn't like the what I felt was the lesson behind it. He was trying to make another lesson, but the lesson that was there about like you should never ask for more than what you're given really pissed me off. Like it drove me.
Can I tell you
I've been
something?
angry at a book in a long time, but I was pissed.
I didn't even know that that was what that was supposed to be about because I immediately started blocking it out. Like I was
Yeah.
reading the story and it was immediately blocked. I couldn't even tell you why that story was told in that novel.
He was trying to explain, I think, a butterfly effect type situation where like one little thing can change a lot of things, but he did it in a terrible way, in my opinion. Like I just think it's a dot. I don't like it. I'm gonna get mad. Like I'm gonna get fired up, and I want to get fired up. So
let the rage flow through you. This is your path to the dark side.
It just sometimes Sanderson tries to make these like philosophical points, and I'm just like, this isn't what you're good at, dude. It's just not what you're good at.
Well,
Like,
I think ironically, I think he's really good at making philosophical points when he's not making them. Does that make sense? So like some of the character arcs in Stormlight, like with Kaladin and stuff like that, like I can think very deeply about because he is not actually trying to write something philosophical. He's writing the character. But whenever he writes like a story that's supposed to be philosophical, it almost never works for me.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I think one of the issues I have, and I'm not going to continue to harp on this, but one of the issues I have is that he is so visible and I know what he thinks about things. And he will, like, for instance, he has this whole thing in his BYU lectures for fantasy writers about how, like, you shouldn't or most likely cannot be a computer programmer and a writer, which is humorous because I know,
Jimmy, you're in trouble. You can't go take that novel writing class.
Yeah, I know, Zach Argyle can never write a book then, right? There's no way. There's
I've heard his
so
books
many.
are terrible. You know what I mean?
Well, I had heard this, right? I had heard him say this, and it is verbatim interest, like what he said in the BYU lecture. And I'm like, I shouldn't know that this is him talking, but it's him talking. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I also happen to not agree. I don't think me and him agree on a lot of things. I think that's the problem. And I read that and I'm just thinking, well, I'm a software engineer. I know software engineers who have written. So you're wrong. And he's also, by the way, I'm being a bit ridiculous. He's not saying that there's no possible way. He's just saying like probably not going to work out. And I
like, oh yeah, mind thing.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff, and like I've been on record like his humor rarely works for me.
Yeah.
It's not what I in general find funny. But yeah, that's funny. I like that rant. It's a bad chapter, so I'm with you there.
It's a real bad chapter. Somebody should have sat him down and been like, "Do you see what you're saying here? And also, there's a lot of poop in this. This is kind of weird. This is just
Check
very
it out.
strange."
Check it
Uh,
out.
now, you had a really good experience at Dragonsteel, from what I could tell, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about tonight. Like, how was it? Like, because I might go next year, so I'm curious.
Ooh. I
Yes,
kind of hope so because we're going to go next year. This was like the trial run because I know everybody's going to go next year and I'm very stressed about crowds. So I figured like less people would be there for Defiant. Um, so that's why we went this year as well. And I think it's going to be really fun if everybody goes. We can all meet and that will be.
I mean, I would almost say that there's like a 90% chance I'm there. So sell me
Yay.
on it. How fun was it?
Um, I mean, I had a blast. It was great. And I think for me it was less about the stuff to do there and more about the people that were there. Like you just step into this room and you're like, "Oh, we're all there. We're all like how do I explain it? Like we've all lived these different lives, but we've all come here for like similar reasons somehow. Like we're all connecting over the same thing and you just talk with these people and you just connect so quickly. Like I would just be talking to random people in lines, in bars after the con shut down. We would stay up like super late and just to connect with these other people was just really great. And actually, so one of the panels, so I was on two panels. One, I knew most of the people because it was like the Trust Book Club people. And then they asked if I wanted to be on another panel and they gave me some options. So I chose it, didn't know the other people, they didn't know me. And now we have a Discord, like for us, just the four of us to talk because we just like literally got on so well. We like
That's
clicked
awesome.
immediately. And I'm just like, oh, I am so excited to see them again next year. Like we chat. And like that's the sort of thing that feels really special.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the things, like watching you at Dragonsteel and like thinking about what you and Zach have done is like one of the things you can look at with like your efforts and your channel is that like you have more concrete impacts like in the fandom, or not fan, I shouldn't say fandom, but in the community of books, or in this instance like Dragonsteel. Um Was that always the plan? Like, I'm thinking of like your indie book fund is kind of what I'm
Mhm.
also thinking about. And then Dragonsteel, like going and doing these things, making these real world connections. And now you can be on panels and like people will go to see this panel and it attracts people to it. So like you're doing things outside of the channel, of your
Mm.
YouTube channel. Did you always know that you wanted to make such like concrete impacts like in the
Yes
community
and
that you're
no.
involved
I mean,
in?
I wouldn't say like I've made like a ton of concrete impacts, but like I am a pie in the sky dreamer a little bit. So like when I started my channel, I thought my biggest pie in the sky dream that I never really verbalized is that I wanted to be able to talk at a conference. Like that, like to do that. So it was really crazy having that opportunity
Mhm.
to do that because I've loved books so much that I love the the physical like manifestation of like being in the community and like that feels very justifying. As far as something like indie fantasy fund, no, but it's also like very personality wise. Zach and I are always usually trying to find some way to get back to community. Something we've done like in a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
like throughout our relationship. So like it kind of felt like natural to do that,
Yeah.
and that's been, like, really rewarding, um, to feel like we help anybody is, you know ultimately, I know I'm, like, in front of a film on a microphone, like, s spewing the most random dumb stuff. So, like, being able to be, like, someone writing an email. I mean, we've gotten a couple of really emotional emails, from that
Oh, I'm
experience.
sure. Yeah.
And like an email that made me cry. I'm not like a super big crier. And so being able to like make that connection with people is what makes it worth it. It's just like it's always everyone always says that. It's like about the people. Like being able to
Yeah.
create that community has been incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah, I mean, seeing you go to Dragonsteel, do panels, meet people, doing the fund, I think that it's a good example in a lot of ways.
Well,
Like
that's nice of you to say. I feel like
so
it's
like
not, but that's very kind.
no, it is though, because like it's very easy to be kind of sucked into like what am I doing for the growth of like this channel or what whatever your project is. Um and sometimes you can lose track of the people. So I just think
Do
it's
you
interesting.
have hopes for that? Did you when you started your channel, or has it gone what you expected?
Hmm. I don't know. I thought when I first started this show many moons ago, that
When you were
this would be
younger.
yes, that this would
When
be
you
an
were so much
opportunity to like maybe extend past just like uploading videos and talking to the ether,
mhm,
and getting to highlight things from people. And I think that that's been somewhat of a success in this, but it doesn't like this is special to me because like I did this and I took the risk and that's
yes.
cool. But there are a lot of long form live streams and stuff that are done now. So like it doesn't feel as if I'm doing something unique. Like there's not a
Mm,
direct approach to that. So I'm always thinking about new ways to kind of reach out and to do things. A lot of it has to do with, the challenges is planning. So one of the things I would like to do, I guess, that now the evolution of this is to go to cons and to meet people, make new connections, bring other people onto the channel that maybe aren't in our circle.
mhm.
And I've done that before. Dr. Gregory B. Sadler is a really good example of that. He's a professor and a philosopher and just an amazing guy, and happens to know a lot about fantasy and sci-fi books and looks at them in a philosophical way. So, like, I guess I would like to do that, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know the answer totally to that question, but I look at what you've done and I find it to be very encouraging in many ways. And seeing you being on a panel at like Dragon's Day, like that's really cool. And that's something that you
It was
can
cool.
do
It was
again.
definitely something I'm gonna treasure forever. Uh, I feel stupid, but I'm like, yeah, that was a top moment for me in my life. Like, it was a top moment because, just connecting with people, and, like, that whole experience was so crazy because, one of the weirdest things was being recognized. I
Mhm.
have never I first of all don't view myself as someone who would be recognizable, if that makes sense. I That's not in my worldview. And so going somewhere with like a highly concentrated amount of people who would more likely view content like my channel and then be recognized was
Yeah.
like one of the strangest experiences I think I've ever had. Like, especially because a lot of the volunteers recognized me. I think that makes sense. Like, if you're gonna volunteer for Dragonsteel, you're
Right.
probably more likely, like, more in the community. So, like, to go to booths to do, like, an activity and people be like, "Oh, you're Bookborn. Oh, that's so crazy," and then, like, help me? Like, that was the whole thing. They'd be like, "Here's the secret," and I'd be like, "Thank you." They're like, "I know you won't let it rest," and I was like,
That's
"Thank
awesome.
you so much." It was so weird, and it was like, "Oh, like, I did something." Like, I think for me,
Hmm.
like, I'm a very like, one of the reasons I started my channel is that I'm, like, a super achievement-driven person. That's why school works so well for me.
Hmm.
You can get a grade in school, A, and so I get A's. Grad school, you know what I mean? Like, same thing. And then I became a parent, and I decided to stay at home because I'm a control freak, and all of a sudden it was like crisis mode. Or like and at work too, right? Like I was at work, you get a review at work. And I got to get my like stamp of approval during my career. And then I went home and I was like, this is horrible.
Hmm.
There is I felt floundering. I have no goal to work towards. There's no promotion. There's no grade. There's no learning, even just like learning that I am doing. So I started my channel as an outlet to like fulfill that need for me
Hmm.
to like have a project um
Yeah, and take pride in something.
and take pride in something that I was doing. And so like to have people be like, I watched your videos and I like it. It was very validating in a way that I know it shouldn't be. Like it shouldn't be validating. But it is.
Hmm. I
Is
think
one of the things.
I mean, everyone likes achievements, I think, but I've always been a big feel person. So there have been times where something I'm doing is being very successful, but it doesn't feel good, you know? And
Mm,
I'm very much like in tune with I hate, it's a silly word, but vibes of it.
mhm.
And it's just funny because there's sometimes where things will be going really well. And this doesn't have to do with YouTube, but even in my life or my job or something. And everything should be hunky dory. And in my head, I'm like, it doesn't feel right. Something's off. Something's different. I got to think about this. Just I think it's actually one of the reasons why school did not work for me in
Mm.
a lot of ways. Because there were simply just some times where like I didn't feel like I should be working on whatever I was supposed to be
The
working
vibes
on.
were bad.
Yeah, I was just like being pulled somewhere else. And I'm like, I feel like if I lack conviction, it's really hard to get me to do something.
Mm.
Which can be a problem. Whenever
Yeah.
if you do want to make achievements or certain goals or whatever.
It is funny because, like, I have been very, stubborn, like, knowing that there are things I could do to grow my channel, but I refuse to do them on pure principle, which
Hmm.
is, like, why I keep making video essays no one's watching because, dang it, that's what
No,
I
that's
want
not
to make.
true. You have quite a few people watch your videos.
Well, I like, just statistically, because I look
Okay,
at this stuff a
okay.
lot,
You do know better
like,
than me about that.
more of my video essays do poorly, I would say, like, not like they
That's fair.
like, I understand, like, a lot of people watch my videos, but I'm saying, like, comparatively to
I
other
get it.
videos, and I don't care because that's I like doing them and they make me happy and I like research. So, there's a limit, but, yeah, I mean, it's fulfilled that that's what I'm saying, I like this answer, like, look, the vibes of the assignment.
I just couldn't get myself to go.
Something you
Sorry.
said earlier, though, that I do feel you on is, like, it's hard. Like, I know you weren't the first person ever in this format, but you were, like, the first in our community to do this in this community, right?
Maybe.
Um, and bigger one then, to have it successful. Um, and it's not like it's a problem, but it can be hard when other people start replicating it because then it somehow doesn't feel yours anymore.
Mhm.
And I've experienced, like, and this is nothing, I'm saying this carefully because I really don't mind it, but, like, people have directly told me they are inspired by my type of content, and then they go make that content. There's nothing wrong with that. I am
Oh, I
not saying
notice it, and I don't like it. I mean, when people copy your stuff, I don't like it. I'll be dead
it's fine.
honest.
Because I don't
Bothers me.
have, like, I don't own it, but it can be
Nah, you
hard.
own it. Nah, you own it. I'll say it. It bothers me. I don't like it.
Maybe it just bothers you because it's other people. Because when people copy Alan's Jeopardy, I actually get fired up about it. So maybe it's just, like, when it
Mm,
happens to other people, but, like, I don't have a problem with it. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad they're engaging," but then it sometimes comes hard for you to feel like, "Well, do I have to adapt again? Do I have to change? What now?" Is that kind of what you're
mhm.
feeling?
I had that feeling once with chat. Like I was like, all right, I gotta do something different. Then I was like, you know what? No, I don't. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. You know, I feel good. Um, man, when people copy Jeopardy or copy a video format that you did that took time to think of, I just think that it just comes off as extremely creatively bankrupt, and it makes me. And I'm not talking about live streams, by the way. Like I'm with you. It offends me more when I see people do it to other people. And by the way, I don't think anyone was copying me. I mean, sure, they might have saw me and like that'd be fun to do, but like I
I know.
always say, I didn't invent
We're not
podcasts.
calling anyone out.
Well, I'm about to. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, whenever like you can't do Jeopardy. Like you can't. It's over. You can't do fantasy book Jeopardy. It's unacceptable. You can't. I'm
It
sorry.
was a very original idea, and it's, like, very obvious where it came from.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, and this is what, you got to have the confidence that you can do it the best.
Yeah. Mm.
And that's what I always try to do. I had some people saying that Sanderson said that it was him. I wanted to highlight these. Someone said that Sanderson said it was him as a software engineer who he couldn't do. If someone can timestamp that, I will 100% watch it and recant my statement. In Tress, it was straightforward, which I said here. And then Arliss, you said no, in Tress, it was imaginary character speaking, which I feel is a bit patronizing. Like you're saying imaginary character, like to be patronizing towards me. And I don't I don't like that. I understand it's imaginary character. However, it is said with some level of authority and backing a personal opinion that the author had. But if Sanderson did in fact said he couldn't be a programmer, then I am wrong, and that's fine. And I'm mistaken, and I apologize to Mr. Sanderson and the financial impact I've had on him.
You should be. Derry, I appreciate that you're not put off by the word essay. I see you. I hear you. Thank you.
I think video essays a lot of times are some of the most interesting content, especially when it comes from you. But also, I just have a very, I guess I have a lot of respect because you tackle things that are really difficult to talk about. And, if you get something wrong, people are going to let you know. Or
yeah, and I do. I think that's how it's so hard about videos is it's not a conversation. So like in a conversation like this, Jenny with buttons. I'll be there, Jared. It's hard because like in a conversation you can be like, oh, you're right, that's wrong, shoot, and then like you adapt the conversation. But in a video you have to put it out there, and then when you make a mistake, 350 people are going to tell you, and it's very difficult to like adapt because the video's already out there and it's a static property, which is hard. But it's funny. I basically only watched like video essayists before I got on YouTube.
Really?
Like that's the only kind of content I watched, was like video essayists. I only like follow like a couple people. And so what's funny is like, I didn't necessarily set out to do it, but I realized like that is weirdly like the content I wanted to make. I didn't have a word for it. I didn't know it was called a video essay, but I was like, yeah, there's not enough like book things like that. Which is kind of how I fell into it, was just like making content I liked to watch. But
yeah, definitely.
Because like the video essays I follow, I should say, were like, some of them were kind of in the book sphere, but not like directly like fantasy books. They covered more.
I watch a lot of YouTube. Most of the YouTube I watch is not book related. So I feel
I don't either.
I always try to think about like, what are they doing with this? And like, is there a way to talk about books with this? And a lot of it's really, really hard because there's just not enough visuals for a lot of books. Like, of course, Stormlight and the Song of Ice and Fire, duh. Malazan, yes, Harry Potter, whatever. But like, if I want to talk about Heroes Die by Stover, like, good luck. And you can't, and if you use AI, everyone's gonna get mad at you. Like, you can't use AI or they're gonna yell at you. So it's like you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't with the art portion of it. I would love to get art commissioned, but it's simply not feasible.
Oh no, so expensive.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that.
Arliss, you're totally okay. So I said that badly. I apologize. What if I meant is I don't feel like he's ever said a universal statement. Yeah, I remember from a BYU lecture from many years ago. So I could be very wrong for that. And you don't have to apologize. You're fine.
It's funny you bring that up, Jimmy, because I just was going to attempt like taking a video in a totally different sphere and adapting it for books. And then I gave up, which was like, I saw someone ranking the unhinged like pop culture moments. And I was like, what if I ranked all the unhinged book community moments from this year? And so I started making a list, and then I was like, I'm not funny enough for this. And also, I actually don't want to get into this drama. And
I was going to say, you don't want to be a drama farmer. You don't want to be a drama farmer.
Yeah, well, I was going to mostly do like the big ones everyone talked about anyway, like that woman tanking her competition, and like funny ones too. Like this one had been for this year, but like everyone thought Sanderson was dying when he released a video. So like, it wouldn't always have just like, I wasn't going to try to make it just like drama. It was going to be like funny or exciting things.
I just imagine you becoming the Keemstar of BookTube.
Oh my gosh.
Which would be
terrible. But it was just like, oh, you have to be funny for these videos to work. And, it just like, I was like, yeah, I immediately give up. Okay. I tried.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with trying something new. I mean, it's just hard enough to try it. And then we were talking about Media Death Cult earlier, and now he's, doing something totally different now, which, by the way, Moid, hello. I commented on one of Moid's videos and was like, hope you have a great holiday or something. And I said, my mom, and he was like, you're so American. Holidays whenever you go on vacation, and it's mom. And I was like, I learned something new every time I watch this channel. What can I say? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I saw your Instagram poll whenever you were asking, like, what are the big drama moments? And I was like, is Bookborn is she gonna go down this hole, like this rabbit
Yeah,
hole?
well, I said either drama or favorite moments from the year. So I actually got like a lot of positive ones too. Like, oh, this was like an exciting thing that happened. But yeah, I was just ended up being not the vibes. The vibes are off, Jimmy. I
All
called
right.
in my professor and said
I
vibes are off.
respect that.
So.
I respect that. Here's a video idea for you. I think you could actually do a really good
Is
job
this
with
a
this.
fake video idea or a real
No,
video
I'm being
idea?
serious. I'm being
Okay.
serious. It's one I've kicked around in my head, but I feel like you would do a better job of it.
Oh,
And it would be predicting headlines from the fantasy book community in 2024.
Oh my gosh.
Like, when's a winner finally comes out. Like, obviously that's not happening, but stuff like that. Like, what are some headlines we could?
Is this aspirational? Because if it's
yeah. Like you're predicting. Yeah, you do a prediction.
No, but I mean, like, if we're trying to send out good vibes, then yes, Winds of Windsor announced for 2024.
I would say it would be better to go the other way on that one and be like, Jimmy Nuts' prediction of Winds of Winter coming out.
On Reddit, someone listed everything George R. R. Martin has ever said about the release date for Winds of Winter. And I screenshotted it.
Listen, I've been reading his blog for like a decade, and it never gets any better. It's literally just him talking about wins, how hard it is, and all of his friends are dying. It's so sad. Like, it's so sad. And then every other one is like wild cards, new wild cards.
Thanks, George. I actually have a lot of sympathy for George. I did joke with Leanna though, like how hilarious it would be if I finished reading A Song of Ice and Fire and then like a month later it's announced that it's coming out. Like somehow me reading it, like, and I didn't have to wait
I'll be a little salty.
I had to wait like 9 months or something. Like the absolute anger people would have.
It'd be interesting to see how that would impact your reading experience compared to someone like me or anybody else who's been waiting so long. Like this book almost has no chance of pleasing people. If we're being honest, the people.
Yeah, I would be way easier to please, first of all.
Yes.
And I would have like none of the theories. Like it would be such a blank slate for me because I'd have none of these ideas that you guys have been ruminating. You guys have been marinating for decades in theory soup. Yes. And I would. If it got announced, I would make a short that was like, I cannot believe I have to wait a year for Winds of Winter and just enjoy.
I think I would be a little bit envious of you. I'd be a little salty, but overall, I don't think anything could like be a downer for me. You know what I mean? Like if it was just released.
I don't think anyone should finish the series. That's my hot take.
I'm kind of with you, actually.
And it's totally uninformed. So I realize I should not be inserting myself into this conversation. It's more just like, I guess it depends how much you just want to know what happens. Because if you want a list of what happens, then you'll be satisfied no matter what. But if you want it in the unique way that George is going to write it, then what is a list of events really matter to me?
I think it'd be really tough for me. And this is where like, I know people who didn't read the Sanderson books because they just love Robert Jordan so much. And they were just like, I can't do it. And I'm like, you know what? I get it. Like,
I get it.
I would read them, but like, I totally understand that.
Yeah. And I would for sure read them. I mean, Wheel of Time was weird for me because I got into it after Jordan died. I read the whole series and then I waited like 2 weeks for the last book to come out, I think. And so I had no stake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's where I am with Winds of Winter. Like, let's pretend it came out next year. Like, it would be so funny to be like the one person with zero stakes in Winds of Winter. It would just be another A Song of Ice and Fire book. Can you imagine how that must feel?
I've been saying for like, I don't know, years that it's going to be November 2024, and it's looking ever more bleak.
You just was there like a star chart involved in that, or like what?
No, I tried to make a prediction based on the New York Giants football record because he loves the New York Giants, and me and Matt have noticed a trend that when the Giants do well, he typically writes more. I know it sounds weird, but like it's actually one of the things he loves the most in life. Like he literally talks about it all the time. He kind of likes the Jets, but we thought the Jets and the Giants are both going to be good this year, and we're like, this is it. And we thought all the stars were aligning, and they both sucked this year, so he didn't write anything.
I'm laughing because what I just said was that you guys have been marinating too long. And
Oh
then
yeah.
you come at me with this like, well, we felt like if the Giants were performing well.
Well, if Eli Manning can talk Michael Strahan out of retirement and get him back on the D line, a couple first round draft picks, we're in business. Yeah, it's pathetic. My life is sad.
Which is, it's just so funny. Like I feel guilty a lot, like getting into it just because I'm just, I'm at a different level. What I do think is very funny is like, did you ever see the movie Logan Lucky?
No.
That movie came out like, I don't know, must have been like 2013 or something, a long time ago, like a decade ago. And in it, there's like a scene where the inmates are like, we won't listen to they're like doing a coup. It's a very silly movie. It's like an Ocean's 11 type movie.
Okay.
And they're like, the inmates are stalling and they're like sending this coup. And they're like, we won't give in till our demands are met. We want Winds of Winter. And they were like, it hasn't been written yet. And they're like, we don't believe you. Before we got in, George said it would be done. And whatever.
That's so funny.
At the time, like I wasn't reading or I wasn't really in the book community. So I ended up randomly rewatching that movie like 4 years ago. And like the fact that that joke still landed like 6 years after that movie was made. And then now, it actually might not have been that long ago. Let me see when that movie was created.
Book 5 did come out the season's Giants won the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. It was released way later than I thought. It was released in 2017. So then I must have watched it in like 2022, 2021.
That was 7 years ago, by the way.
Okay. Well, shh. And so the funny, like that joke still works 7 years later is so funny to me.
Yeah, it's funny. It's hilarious. I'm over the top with humor. Oh my goodness.
And Derry, I liked what Derry said. I keep missing so many great comments, but she said festering is the word. It was up earlier. She said, festering. You guys aren't marinating, you're festering.
Yes, the word is festering. We've been festering.
Festering. And what's really fun is like if George never writes it, then at some point, this is like those all two lines are going to always cross if they're not parallel. Eventually, I will hit a critical mass of festering with all of you so that it won't be mattering that you festered for 20 years and I've only festered for 10. We've all eventually hit the same level, like at some point.
Think 2-3 years. How about this? A reread. You got to reread and then you can join the bandwagon.
I've got to reread and I've got to get to the point where my theories become increasingly unhinged. And then like a certain amount of time. And then it's like, oh, you've reached, it doesn't matter that you read it late. You're now also here.
Tyrion's the time traveling fetus. That's the magnum opus of theories. And it kind of makes sense, honestly, if you think about it. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, one of the people I collab with, his idea, he wants, when I'm done reading the series, because he's like really into it, he wants me to come on and he just wants to tell me the wildest theories and have me react to them.
It's a fantastic idea.
He was like, and I was like, yeah, so we're planning it for next year whenever I finish. But he was like, yeah, I just want to tell you the craziest theories.
Who is this?
Oh, this is Lore of the Worlds.
Okay.
He's a smaller channel who focuses a lot like on Sanderson, but is kind of like breaking out into other stuff.
Cool.
We've collabed on a few video essays together because he's like a video essay person. But I was like, that is the most fantastic idea, and I am 100%.
Yeah, that would be very, very entertaining. As I went through One Piece, some of the theories that people told me, I just had one told to me that is so ridiculous. And I'm like, what's the basis? And they're like, oh, there is none. I was like, okay, fair enough. It works.
It's funny. So I have the first 3 volumes of One Piece sitting on my nightstand as well. That's something else I want to read because I loved the live action. Yeah. So I thought I should go read it. It is funny though, because like the angry comments I got on my Instagram when I said that I bought it about like, you're turning into a manga channel. And I'm like, would you guys like calm down? I'm sorry I bought something I was interested in reading. Heaven forbid.
I created an entirely separate channel. I don't link the 2 channels back and forth. I very rarely, and here I'll casually talk about. I've never plugged dudes talking. Maybe once, once, and then people didn't know about it. And I've been releasing videos for like 6 to 9 months. And then they would find out about it and they get mad retroactively. And I'm like, I'd be like if I ran a true crime channel like a headless true crime channel. Do I run one? Maybe. And people being mad about it. Like if they, you know what I mean? It's like, it makes no sense to me. I don't get it.
Because here's the thing, I probably will make a video on it. My idea currently is to read the entire, is it Deep Blue? That's not right.
East Blue.
East Blue. Yeah. The entire East Blue arc. And then just be like, well, I watched the show first. How did I feel about it? That's my plan. And so like one video, and I know people are going to be so pissed about it. And it's like, here's the thing though, like it's my channel, and I think it'll be interesting to talk about it from that, because I love the live action, and I think it's very compressed and very different, and just, and I also just get so annoyed. Like, look, a booktuber wants to make what they want to make. Like, if you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to watch it. Like, that's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you got to say you're a YouTuber now, not a booktuber.
Is manga not a book?
Who knows? Who knows?
I just it's just funny because I do want to make that video, but I'm like, I'm already preactively annoyed by like how people are gonna be like, you're just gonna turn into a manga channel. It's like, what part of my channel makes you think that? Like, please. I do a lot though of book to movie content.
Yeah, I was going to say, you do book to movie content, and you do video essays about stories and characters. Like, you're not over there doing a ton of book reviews, book haul. You know what I mean? Like, you're not doing a lot of the archetypes anyways. So I think it makes plenty of sense.
I mean, it does. And if it didn't, it doesn't matter. It's my channel. I can talk about whatever I want.
Yeah.
But it is funny. And, like that's what someone told me about Wheel of Time. It was really funny. Like, someone was like, you say you're not going to come back, but you just want the money and the views, so you'll be here in season 3. And I was like, first of all, I actually am thinking about releasing, like, you want to see how much money I make on YouTube? I'd love to tell you. Tell me if it's worth this hate. Making my $2 a video. Like, please. Anyway, that's mostly the reason I'm not coming back, is just to spite that single person. Like, it made me so angry.
Did they like the show or hate the show?
Oh, they were a show hater.
Okay, so this is the ironic part about that, is that they hate the show, but they want you to create content so that they can hate more. You know what I mean? Like, they need a place to get that hate out, and then you're not going to provide it, so therefore they're mad at you. That's what it really is. Yeah.
I mean, my Wheel of Time content is super interesting because people are furious at me because I'm like in the middle. Like, there's people who are furious at me because I like something, and people who are furious at me because I don't like something. It's a win. It's a lose-lose, to be honest. But yeah, have you ever had this, Jimmy, where like you read a lot of mean comments, and objectively the last one you read isn't that mean, but it just tips you over the edge.
Yeah.
And so you're like, screw that guy. And so you're like, screw that guy. I'm not making any season 3 content.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I didn't make a One Piece video for like 2.5 months. I mean,
exactly. You're just like, screw that person. I'm done.
But I really was punishing people who actually enjoyed it, which was, tens of thousands of people. So I kind of had to come off of it a bit, but it was good to take a break, honestly. Speaking of books, the show, are you excited for this Netflix adaptation of Three Body Problem? Have you seen the trailer? Like, what do you think? I haven't watched the newest trailer.
I just never watch trailers. Is that weird?
No,
I just watch trailers. Perfect. I feel like people react so strongly to trailers, and I'd rather just not have this thing. I don't know how to feel about it. I am going to watch it.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you going to watch it? Because I know, like, there's shows that get adapted, or books and stories that get adapted. I'm like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not going to watch it. But I am very, very interested in this show.
I've been worried about that because the things I like about Three Body Problem, I am concerned are not very easily adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest concern being like it turns into some like very action-y thing, space battle, something. You know what I mean?
It's definitely happening. Yeah, you should. Yeah.
So,
but maybe it'll be cool.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be dope. I don't know.
I think my really, really unpopular opinion is I don't need adaptations.
With you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, everyone's always so concerned about a storyline adaptation. And the only reason I really want a Sanderson adaptation to happen is that I enjoy authors I like being successful. And I know that getting adaptations is a huge milestone for authors. So for that reason, I am invested. But like as me personally, if Stormlight never got adapted, I would not lose a single hour of sleep over it.
Yeah, I'm with you. That someone, I can't remember who, someone asked me like my bookish hot take, and I was like, my hot take is that like sometimes books are better as books. You know, but like for instance, like Book of the New Sun, I don't really want to see Book of the New Sun adapted. First Law trilogy would be a bit difficult, though they're doing Best Served Cold, so who knows what will happen there. But like,
And that makes sense to me because Best Served Cold is like the plottiest that Joe Abercrombie gets, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a movie that could do well with the masses, I think.
Correct.
And it could lead to other opportunities, which is fantastic. I like Malazan is one that a lot of people talk about. And I actually there's scenes that I would love to see adapted, don't get me wrong, but I want it more for Erickson than I do for myself.
Exactly.
I mean, just I'd like to see the man get the bag. It'd be great.
Yeah, I just I mean, I've always say this, it's not like a elitist thing. It's just like I like books. Like that is my favorite media form.
Yeah.
And I like the unique things that was that me? Sorry. I like popped out.
No, you're good. I wasn't sure if it was me or you, but you're fine.
It means in general that like yeah, I don't necessarily need to see stuff and thoughtful books always make me very nervous.
Yeah.
And like Joe Abercrombie's interesting because he's such a good dialogue writer that I think adaptations could really work. On the other hand, like the inner monologues of his characters are so stunningly hilarious and perfect and amazing. It's hard for me to picture experiencing his works in that way.
I almost imagine like office cuts where they look at the camera. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Gamba
Exactly.
docs.
But I do think like you know, when I think Wheel of Time, yeah, like one of the best parts of watching that, which like I've been critical mostly of that show. I liked a lot of things about it, but critical. But in the second season, like there were scenes that they did so well that was just like amazing to watch. Like
Yeah.
it was like, oh wow. Like that was actually just like really amazing to see on screen. But like, was it worth it? I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, I'm also Brendan Park said, I don't understand actively being against adaptation being made. I have a bulletproof way of being disappointed. But yeah, I've always been a pretty big fan of like, you know, just if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. And I've also been very good at separating things, you know, like even the Game of Thrones TV show and stuff. I can separate those stories as two different things. And I don't
Yeah,
get caught up
and
in
it's
the
funny you
lore.
mention that because people are shocked. They're like, "Well, you love Game of Thrones. You're definitely gonna give in and watch the show." And I'm like, "I'm not," because also I have zero need. I have zero need to see it play out on screen.
You're
I
experiencing it the best way.
it played in my head, so
Yeah.
I don't need it. Like I enjoy it. Like yes, I've had fun watching some of those scenes that people have been like, "These were really well done scenes."
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't need it. In any way. And I do so it's like, yeah, and just don't watch it. Like that's what I don't understand. Like, uh, I don't have any vitriol against uh Rings of Power. I'm not out here like making all this hate content. It was the most boring 6 hours of my entire life, so I will not be watching season 2. But like it's so funny because people got angry at me for that. They're like, you're so stuck up and like such a you're one of those bad book lovers because you're not going to watch season 2." And I'm like, isn't that like the thing I'm supposed to do? I'm not going to make hate content about it. I'm literally just going to stop watching it.
Yeah, you can just not watch, like, you can just not like something and not have to like be involved. And like,
Yeah.
I honestly, Rings of Power, the very first episode, I was like, oh my God, I'm back in Middle Earth. I was like, oh my God. And then it did nothing outside of that for me. I know people who really enjoyed it, and I'm glad. I
Yeah.
just was like, I don't need this, I guess.
I actually it's funny
And
because I was like pretty on board for because I think they dropped like the first 2 episodes, I want to say.
yeah, I think I watched the
Mm.
first two, and I was like,
Oh.
I think I watched three and I quit. I think I
Oh
watched
yeah. So I we watched first 2 and we're like, oh, okay. This is like, it's not like the best you've ever watched, but like, yeah, I'm totally into it. And then like every episode got increasingly more boring. And a little nonsensical. I talked about that. But I mostly told people like, I'm not out here like feeling angry. I'm just bored. I'm literally just so bored, and I don't even really love watching TV anyway. So like the worst thing you can be is just like so boring.
Yeah, you never want to feel apathetic towards something either. And that's what I was feeling. Also, to be honest, the conversation around it was very exhausting. Like, it was very, very exhausting. And I was just like, I'm gonna go read a book. Like, I was like, I'm just gonna go read
And that
whatever.
I think Rings of Power was so funny because I was doing like show versus book lore comparison for those. And
Mhm.
the only reason I continued is because like people were like, please just finish the season. And I was like, okay, I will finish the season. I'll do it. But it did convince me like then it's not fun anymore. Like, and that's what happened with Wheel of Time. Because initially, like in the first season, even though it was up and down for me, like I was having fun. Like it
Yeah.
was fun to watch the show and think about the book and help people remember how it was in the book because it wasn't intended to be a negative thing. And we talked about that when you did your House of the Dragon videos. We
Yes.
chatted a little bit about that. And I was
Yes.
like, yeah, it doesn't have to be like this negative thing. Just like you're just trying to be a resource. And then like the further it got from that, and I was like, why am I making videos if they're not sparking joy anymore?
Yeah. And also, like, if things get super far away, sometimes you can almost feel like you're like, "Well, what am I even talking about here?" I kind of felt like that with House of the Dragon because, like, obviously, Fire and Blood is not like a normal novel in the
It's a
sense that,
history book, right? And
yeah,
they've
it's a history. And it's like, well,
they've
this
made
is
it have a plot.
this. Basically, we were finding out the in betweens is what was happening. We were finding out what really happened in those moments. What really happened, as far as this show is telling us, is maybe not
Right,
book
right,
canon,
right.
but and I think it was after the second episode, I was like, I don't think this is useful. I was like, I just don't think this is useful. And also, most people watching the show weren't book readers.
Right.
That's another big thing. It's the moms and the pops
Yeah,
and
but, like, sometimes, like, I got a lot of non-book readers, surprisingly, like, on my Wheel of Time
interesting.
videos, like, a lot of people were like, "Well, I'm not interested in reading it, but I am kind of interested just, like, well, what happens?" And those were
Yeah.
the nice people, like, those were, like, the funnest people, like, that's and I feel bad because those are the people who want me the most to do it because 'cause they're like, "Oh," and I know I'm punishing the majority of good, but yeah,
But
it
if you
just
don't want
doesn't
to do
serve.
something, you just don't have to
Yeah.
do it.
And then also I can watch season 3 and quit whenever I want. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like, if I watch it and I'm enjoying it, then I'll watch it, and if I'm not, then I'll quit,
And if you get a spark to talk about it, you can do that.
and then I can.
It's
Yeah, maybe
totally
I'll do a season wrap up or something, and then I also won't have to watch it the night it comes out and
yes.
take notes and then write a script the same night and stay up till 3 AM to get it out the night like, I'm feeling pretty good about not doing that.
Yeah, it sounds way better. You might even enjoy it more because of it.
I think I would, actually.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I wish you the best whenever it comes out. Do we know when that's coming out?
Here's the good news well, good news and bad news, like 2.5 years or something.
Yeah, it's a long, long
So,
time. That's
like, by that time, we might be dead. Didn't we already discuss that? Like, by the time the 10th you said by the time this, like, Stormlight Archive comes out, like,
Oh,
who
I'm
knows?
definitely dead. There ain't no doubt. I'm definitely dead.
Like, yeah,
I
who
keep
knows?
making all these fatality jokes on every project I'm on, and then, like, one day it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be really awkward for everyone, and I look forward to that. I want you guys to know I'll be looking up at you laughing.
We'll be, I'll come and I'll speak at your funeral and be like, "This is what he wanted. He
This is how
predicted
he
it.
wanted to go
This
out.
is how he wanted it to be."
Slipping on a scooter someone left on the sidewalk. He always knew it would end like
Do
this.
do people leave scooters out on the sidewalks where you are all
Not
day?
anymore, they got rid of them, but yeah, there were
Oh.
a bunch of like, those electronic scooters, like,
Oh.
yeah, there was,
It was just such an oddly specific thing to say. I was very curious about it.
that shit-eating grin is looking up joke didn't.
Oh, I understood the looking up joke. I was trying to decide if I was going to take you seriously and talk about it or just let it go, and I let it go. I did understand it actually.
Is a bad joke.
Um, it this is let me tell you what just went through my head. It was like looking up, and then it was like for some reason my mind immediately went to hell is the absence of God, where it has
Oh, wow.
everything. Because
Okay.
there was like the whole thing where like you could see them looking up in despair, and then at that point we lost the plot, so I just moved on.
That Ted Chiang always interjecting himself in my crappy jokes.
Just yeah, intrusive thoughts by Ted Chiang.
Dang it, Teddy. Well, Bookboard, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I feel like we almost always go almost 3 hours or more. And it's always something that flies by because it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I appreciate you. I reached out to you way too late because I realized I needed an episode this week. And I have been thinking about having you on. So I'm glad that we were able to do this. 9 months is a long time. I'm going to try not to wait 9 months again.
I just feel honored that I'm the first of the year. I'm like, is that the energy we want? I don't know. Maybe we should have discussed it. Like, what's the 2024 energy?
The energy is unclear. I think is the best way to go about it.
The energy is if the Giants play well, then Wins a Winner is coming out.
It's not looking good. It's not looking good. I think I'm gonna punt to 2027 and join Jake with that. Okay. We know he has a few more 100 pages to write, so who knows? Just split the book, George. Just split it. I don't even care. Just give me.
Has a few hundred more pages, kind of like how Rothfuss wrote all 3 books before the first was published. Is that on the same level, or
no? No, I don't think it's that bad. I mean, this guy hasn't been able to get a chapter done in a year, and
didn't actually even release a chapter that people paid money for. So that's so fun, huh?
Infuriating. I wish I hadn't enjoyed those books so much, but I did. It's unfortunate.
The other day I told someone, I was like, I don't even know if I'd read Doors of Stone if it came out. And then like 10 seconds later, I was like, I would absolutely read Doors of Stone. That was
I'd read that.
Authentic thing for me to say.
It's one of the things, it doesn't cost you anything to say, and like no one, most people think that they're not gonna like call you on it. If you've ever said you wouldn't read Wins, anyone listening to this, I've screenshotted it. I'm just like,
at least I called myself out on it. I was like, I said it and then immediately took it back. I was like, that is absolutely a lie.
Yeah, you're like, I'm being ridiculous.
I would totally go buy it first day. It's like, because I want to punish Rothfuss, but ultimately, like, it will be such a cultural moment. There is no way I'm missing out on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's too big at this point.
There's a lot of questions in that series that I'd like to see answering.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Well, Bookborn, tell people where they can find you. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone here probably already knows about your channel, but I'd love to hear you plug it anyways.
You can find me at Bookborn. And I'm on Instagram too. And sometimes I just do random polls that you can participate in.
A lot of
fun.
Times.
They show up on my channel. You guys can be a part of the conversation.
That's like where you kind of like source your research, I feel.
Well, not real research. I usually try to do that from like actual sources. But it is where I try to source like general feelings.
Yeah, and like ideas maybe. Like
like
the temperature.
You know, like when I found out that liking Catelyn was unpopular, I immediately went to Instagram and was like, hey, tell me what you feel about Catelyn. And it was a very sad poll, but it did tell me a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, go follow her there. Go subscribe to her channel. And chat, thanks for being here. And if you're watching after that fact, also, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you guys are all doing good. We're starting off 2024 with a bang. I feel good. We're here. We're doing the thing. The vibes are solid. And I'll be back in about 2 weeks, ? I'm pretty sure 2 weeks I should be able to do another episode. So I'll be around for that. But Bookborn, thank you again for your time tonight. Thank you. Folks, be good, be safe. Remember to always keep turning the page.